1,000 miles away, Master Ilhu spat a mouthful of golden blood and went down on the grass. I did not appear to notice and told him to get up and keep running. He almost passed out from lack of breath and called me an ancestor. What he had just used was a secret technique of the Cheonbul Temple, and one use cost vital essence and 10 years of lifespan on top of it. We had already put 1,000 miles behind us, so could this poor monk please catch his breath, seeing as he was a minor nascent soul cultivator and not a soul transformation power. I looked back toward the imperial capital and told him that one use only shortens his life by 10 years. Wanana Golta at soul transformation perfection had not survived a single exchange with perfected Okwa. When my grandmaster arrived, he would not be losing 10 years but all of them at once. The monk came off the ground like a man stung and cast it again. 10 years is a rounding error to me. I have slept away more than that on a slow afternoon. I came down on the grass hard enough to knock the wind out of me, and Master Ilhu landed beside me with his face already the shade of a corpse. He had heard what perfected Okwa could do, and he had answered it by casting that secret technique 6 times running, carrying us 6,000 miles. A whole man could not spend himself that freely, and a broken one had no business trying, so what lay beside me was a monk separated from a dead person by one breath. 6,000 miles still did not sit right with me. I took hold of him and went into the bloodescape 12 times over, which is the exact wall of what this body can do. One more and I would have dropped where I stood, with no enemy required. I threw out a handful of formation flags, worked a fistful of pills past his teeth, and spent the last of myself on the follow-up work before my eyes went dark. The last thing I thought was that if my grandmaster could catch me, he was welcome to kill me, since running any further would cost me my life without him lifting a finger. Outside the imperial capital, perfected Okwa arrived where we had first stopped, and threw his divine sense across 1,000 miles in every direction. His mouth twitched because his grand disciple turned out to be extremely good at running. The body standing there was only a clone, and he knew our auras the way a man knows his own hands. Anything short of 5,000 miles, and he was certain of the catch. And even past that, he had ways to feel us inside 10,000. He had used every one of them and found nothing, which meant we had crossed 10,000 miles in under 2 hours. He sneered and told his good grand-disciple to hide well, then flew back, since the main body had troubles of its own. Master Ilhu lay on the flying sword like a dropped coat, while I, having recovered a sliver of spiritual power, started us moving again. He asked whether we could please stop running, since perfected Okwa was only at the peak of soul transformation, and we had crossed 10,000 miles. I sped up instead. Caution cost nothing, I told him, and who knew what secret techniques my grandmaster kept for finding people. So let us do 20,000 miles first. I told him to stop talking and heal, because once he was healed, he could carry us and run. He rolled his eyes enormously and shut them to work on his injuries. 100 years apart, and this old acquaintance was still exactly as careful as he had always been. He had a great many questions saved up for me. He wanted to know why I had left all those years ago without a word of goodbye, and how the longevity immortal came to know me at all. He also wanted to know how a man with no cultivation talent had turned up at Golden Core. Every one of them would keep until we were somewhere safe. A month went by, and I did exactly what I said I would, and put a full 20,000 miles behind us. He asked whether we could stop now, since we were 30,000 miles out, and perfected Okwa could be an immortal and still not find us. We came down onto a mountain peak together. I said that was about right, since there was now an entire imperial dynasty sitting between us and Night Moon country. He said that if I said there was no problem, then there was probably no problem. And then he started in on how about back then, and where was. I cut him off and asked where Nyeomsang was. His eyes slid away from mine, and he clearly had no idea how to hold my gaze while he said it. He got out that the martial ant was gone. I asked what that was supposed to mean, because if he told me she had met a terrible end, I could at least understand the sentence. Gone meant nothing. She had walked into the forbidden ground of Night Moon country with him, and a healthy living woman does not simply stop existing. He said with difficulty that after the sect learned perfected Okwa had betrayed the country, the two of them were sent to investigate the forbidden ground and turn the war. Following the trail Sangchong Temple gave them, they found the secret without much trouble. They were discovered while sealing the ominous power. Juan and Agalta called in 2 soul transformation old ancestors to surround them, and the old ancestors of the Cheonbul Temple and the Yongrong sect came to pull them out. Even so, they could not break the encirclement, and in the end, the 2 old ancestors spent their own lives to force most of that power back under seal. My brow came down, and I told him I had not asked about the situation inside the forbidden ground. I wanted to know whether Lee Nyeomsang was alive or dead. He said that once the old ancestors were gone, the 2 of them had no way out either, and they had both expected to die. Then the martial ant found a damaged ancient teleportation formation inside the bronze ancient temple, ruined but repairable with a little work. I asked what came next, and told him not to give me a speech about staying behind alone to cover her retreat. He said of course not, since nobody chooses to die when living is on offer. The formation was damaged, he said, and he had fallen out partway through the teleport. After that, he hid in the crack of the seal, where he made it clear that anyone who came to kill him was welcome to die alongside him. Without that arrangement, he would not be breathing now. I asked where the teleportation formation in the temple went. He said he did not know, that ancient teleportation formations are far beyond him, but that the distance had to be over 100,000 miles. My head swelled listening to him. In an ocean of people that wide, where exactly does a man go looking for that girl? He saw the worry on my face and told me not to take it so hard. The martial aunt had already reached the peak of nascent soul and stood one step short of soul transformation. A woman with that strength lives well wherever she lands. Then he circled back and asked how I had suddenly arrived at Golden Core, since he distinctly remembered my talent being wretched. He also asked how the martial aunt had known me so long ago and how long I had actually been alive. I did not answer any of it. Instead, I stripped the restriction off the little white wolf and let her come back to her own shape, and Wan Wolf sat down where she stood. She did not run and she did not throw herself at me. She simply sat there empty-faced, and after a while 2 lines of tears came down. I asked her, honestly baffled, why she was crying since her father had not been killed by me. In that clearing she had walked out with her life, and I told her she ought to be pleased. She bristled instantly and demanded to know why she was not allowed to cry. The father she loved most had used her and then died, and she asked whether I would cry if the same thing happened to me. Having got that out of her system, she wiped her face and thanked me quietly for collecting her father's body. He had used her, she said, but he was still her father, and without me he would have been left in the open. Master Ilhu observed helpfully that her father would not have been left in the open, since perfected Okwa needed the body and the bloodline, so even buried he would have been dug straight back up. Her stare hit him like a thrown knife, and he covered his mouth and retreated like a well-behaved child. Having driven the monk off with nothing but a look, she turned back and asked what I planned to do next. I told her it was nothing much. I had seen enough of this cultivation world and intended to go back to selling coffins, with no plans to return to the Great Qian dynasty for now. Then I asked the two of them the same question. She thought about it and said perfected Okwa had taken hold of Night Moon Country, and that if this went on the people there would suffer a catastrophe. Whatever it cost, she had to go back. I looked at Master Ilhu. He invoked the Buddha and announced that both the Great Qian dynasty and Night Moon Country were in dire straits. As the saying goes, if he did not go down to hell, then who would? And this poor monk was willing to offer himself to the demons. I told him to talk like a person. He admitted he needed to take the Qianbul temple and run very far away, because perfected Okwa was never going to let it be. I nodded, and 8 coffins came down in front of him. I told him the coffins held my master and my senior brothers, and that since he was heading back anyway, he could carry them along. I handed him the auspicious burial ground I had chosen, and told him to bury them at the address marked on the map. He looked at the map, then at me, and his mouth twitched as he asked whether I could possibly have prepared all of this long ago. He had guessed correctly, I told him. From the day I entered Songcheng Temple, I had prepared a coffin and a burial ground for every one of my senior brothers, including my master and my grandmaster. He asked whether by that logic I had prepared one for him too. I said I had, but that he would need to pay, though for the sake of our acquaintance I would give him 20% off. His face did something complicated. He objected that he was standing right there alive and well, and asked whether it was not early for me to be laying out his coffin and grave. I told him that preparing early saves trouble later, since it is not as though he was never going to die, and the day would arrive sooner or later. He had nothing to say to that, though I could see him agreeing with me and hating it. He tried again, arguing that he was currently a cultivator at Nascent Soul, and that reaching soul transformation was not out of the question for him. I asked whether soul transformation cultivators do not die. That finished the conversation. Unable to win a single exchange, he packed away the coffins and the map, saying he appreciated the thought but that it was by no means settled whose body would be collecting whose. Then he asked who this 100 Defeats Immortal Venerable was, since without that phantom the two of us would certainly be dead, and suggested I drop him a clue. I waved it off and told him to forget it. The 100 Defeats Immortal Venerable was a figure from 2,000 years ago at the very least, and by now there would not be ash left of him. I had found the stone coffin he left behind in the limitless secret realm, and it carried a record of some of his deeds. He had originally meant to pass away there and then chose somewhere else instead. At the time, I simply assumed the senior had found himself a better spot. After the secret of the Bronze Ancient Temple came out, the situation stopped looking that simple. I had thrown the coffin out on a whim, I admitted, and had not expected it to work. Wan and Wool asked with real curiosity what I would have done if the stone coffin had not worked. I said that in that case I would have had no choice but to go over to my grandmaster's side. Selling coffins for a living does not mean I am eager to get into one. She had no answer for that at all. It made sense, she seemed to be thinking, and she still could not work out how a man says such a thing so easily. She could not decide whether to call me cold-blooded and heartless, or loyal and righteous. Cold-blooded did not fit a man who crossed thousands of miles into Night Moon country and gambled his life to carry an old friend's corpse out. Loyal and righteous did not fit a man who discusses defecting to the enemy without the faintest weight on his conscience. I let her sit with it. After walking them through a few remaining details, I waved them off and told them to get going. Even if the stone coffin had not finished perfected Okwa, it had bought him a mountain of trouble, and now that they both knew his secret, he could not kill them openly. If they were careful, I said, they should live. Master Ilhu looked at how calm I was and asked, puzzled, whether I really was not going to try to talk them out of it. I told him that rain comes when it comes, that widows remarry, and that every living thing arrives at its end, and none of that changes. The only variable is whether it happens a little earlier or a little later. This was the road the two of them had chosen for themselves, so what business did I have arguing? At most I would give them a discount on top of the discount, I said, for whatever coffins they eventually bought for me. Master Ilhu stood there with nothing to say, thinking that what I said made perfect sense and that I was, all the same, an absolute bastard. Ilhu rolls his eyes and says he cannot stand a heartless creature like me. He is leaving, he says, and in 800 years or 1,000 he will come back to collect my corpse. Then he turns, and Wanan Wool gives me one long look before following him down the slope. I watch him go and say nothing. He has lost every argument we ever had, which never once made him stupid. I met him the year Lee Nyomseng surfaced at the Yongrong sect, and by then she had already lived past 60. Counting the years I spent in Yongrong town before that, better than 80 had gone by. Set her age beside how long she had known me, and the arithmetic tells you what I am. Ilhu never once asked. I stretch and turn to look at the kingdom sprawling behind me. They call it the Hyunmu Kingdom, and I wonder aloud what a man might find to enjoy in it. Then I walk down the mountain. Bittersea Town, and a man close to 7 feet tall shoulders through the crowd at my shop and drops to his knees. I get Big Ox up and tell him to say what is wrong, that I will help if I can. He wipes his face and pulls a handful of blood-stained spirit stones out of his shirt, swearing this is everything he has and that he will gather the rest somehow. All he asks is that I make his brother's body whole again. I look at the plank under the white cloth and shake my head, because business is business and nobody pays me later. Then I mention that I know the two of them gather spirit medicine for a living, and that I am short on materials. He swallows his grief and drags over the basket at his feet, and one glance is enough to price it. The basket holds low-grade materials and not particularly good ones, and even inflated out of pity it comes to 3 low-grade spirit stones. So I tell him these are exactly the high-grade materials I have been hunting, and I take the lot for 100 spirit stones. The beeskin pouch I hand him is heavy enough to make him blink. My funeral service carries a minimum of 100 spirit stones, I add, but the shop is running a promotion, so he may as well take a good coffin with it. The 100 spirit stones go on a short journey and come back into my hand. I lift the white cloth slowly. What is under it is not really a body anymore, and half the crowd loses its stomach at the sight. I ask how it happened. They found a century-old spirit medicine with a guardian monster beast over it, Big Ox says, and he knew better than to touch it. Second Ox went back for the herb behind his elder brother's back, and by the time Big Ox got there, his brother was already this. It is his own fault, he says, because his brother wanted the herb to trade for resources for him. Then he is sobbing and cannot stop. I lay out a full set of professional tools instead of answering. Several onlookers go off to be sick at the sound of flesh fitted back against flesh. I keep my hands moving, murmuring the order to myself as I go. Tendons before bones, limbs before torso, and the organs above all must not be left in disarray. The ruin under my fingers slowly remembers what shape it used to be. It takes an hour, and what is missing I make up out of other materials. When the coffin is under him, I tell Big Ox the funeral work is finished, and that he should go and let his brother rest. Then I sit at the table by the wall and start setting sprains, because the queue does not care what I have just been doing. A big man with a broken arm laughs and says I dabble in far too many trades. Cornering the funeral business here is one thing, but I also run alchemy and treat the sick, and the other day he watched me carve a formation into a coffin lid. He asks whether I am about to open another shop. I glare and tell him this is his own people's fault. I sold coffins, and then somebody turned up wanting a coffin with a half-dead man still attached to it who could still be saved. My reward was no gratitude and a rumor across 3 streets that my medical skill was superb, so the sick came and I opened a clinic. Then they got greedy for the medicine and pestered me for a month, and that is how I ended up doing alchemy. While I am talking, I put my weight into my hand, and he makes a noise like a pig under the knife as the bone seats. I slap a plaster over it before he can complain. His arm will move again in a month, I tell him, and he should pick fewer fights. He is at body refinement 3rd layer, and the man who did this to him is 5th layer at the least. If that man had not held back, the hand would have been gone. He grins through the sweat and says he was careless and will not lose the next one. His 3 yang body forging cultivation technique is profound rank against the other man's yellow rank advanced, so he lost purely on realm. At the 4th layer, he says, I should watch him fight across realms. I let it go. The warlike streak here is grown into the bone, and telling these people not to compete is harder than telling them not to breathe. I am halfway through the next patient when several heavy auras come down out of the sky, and every low-level cultivator in the street steps aside with practiced ease. A young man in expensive clothes bows and greets the immortal master. I put down the splint and tell Jua Seongha that I truly regret saving him, since he has come to invite me once a year for 10 full years. He smiles and says that if the invitation ever works, 10 more years would be nothing, and that without my rescue a decade ago, he would already be down among the Yellow Springs. What he does not understand is why a man with my talent hides in a place this small, when the kingdom would make me its national master the moment I agreed. I click my tongue and give him the same answer I have given 9 times. I am not refusing out of arrogance, and his terms are not the problem. The imperial capital simply cannot compete with Bitter Sea Town. This place sits on the rim of the Monster Beast mountain range and produces fresh medicinal materials and good timber every day, and a coffin shop and a clinic need exactly those 2 things. Seongha smiles and does not argue, having listened to that excuse for a decade. He says the kingdom is starved for talent and that this time he has brought materials to compensate my losses. Under the red cloth on his tray sit 2 medicinal herbs and a jade slip. The 7-star grass is a treasure of the Hyunmu imperial family, guarded 300 years, and the 1,000-year flesh Ganoderma cost the kingdom a great deal to obtain. The jade slip holds the 9 revolutions mysterious skill, which would sit among the heaven-ranked techniques if it were not missing everything past the first 3 layers. All of it is mine, he says, if I will come to the capital. I am tempted, and I do not bother hiding it. The Hyunmu kingdom builds its cultivators around the physical body, and the bodies it produces leave the great Qian dynasty far behind. Its techniques are graded into 4 ranks: heaven at the top, then earth, then profound, then yellow. The only heaven rank technique openly acknowledged here is the Chonggang body forging art, handed down the imperial line. Putting the second best thing in the country on a tray in a street market is not generosity. It is a man turning out his pockets. I go look properly and say out loud that flesh Ganoderma and 7-star grass are the main materials for the legendary glazed pill. Swallow 1, and the stories claim a Vajra glazed body strong enough to move mountains and turn seas over. By the realms of the place I come from, nothing under a soul transformation stage cultivator could break it. Something bright moves in Seongha's eyes when he hears me price his gift that accurately. Then I pull the red cloth back over the tray, and the light goes out of his face. He asks whether the gift still fails to enter my Dharma eye, and tells me to name whatever I want on any condition at all. I sigh at him. It is not that I fail to appreciate the gesture, I tell the young lord, only that I have no wish to be dragged into the affairs of an imperial family. The higher the price a man offers, the uglier the trouble behind it. My abilities are not equal to it, I say, so he should find somebody more capable. Then I wave him off and turn back toward my shop. That is when he says, to my back, that surely I still want news of the bronze ancient temple. My foot stops in the dirt. He says he found one. 10 years ago I mentioned it in passing and thought nothing of it afterward. But he kept it, and quiet investigation has finally turned up clues. Worse, the clues run through matters in the imperial capital, so I will have to make the trip. Ever since Lin Yomsang vanished inside a bronze ancient temple, I have been asking after the others, and in more than 10 years here, I never heard a whisper. The 18 of them are scattered nobody knows where, and this world is vast in a way that makes a man tired to think about. So I tell him fine, but I want it said in advance that I can only do my best. He is nearly glowing when he says he will wait outside. Inside the shop, I sweep my belongings into the system space and stop in front of the luxurious coffin standing in the corner. 5 years collecting corpses in the Night Moon country. 43 years selling coffins in this kingdom. Rounded off, that is very nearly 49 years since I walked out of Songchang Temple. Back then, Third Brother had wrecked his foundation and had 50 years of lifespan left at the outside. Now trouble is stirring again, and heaven may be tapping me on the shoulder about collecting Third Brother's body. I run my hand over the coffin, which is covered end to end in array patterns. 40 years of work went into it. Its eventual occupant is perfected Okwa, the man whose butchery chased me 30,000 miles into the Hyunmu kingdom. My grandmaster. Collecting one body is collecting, and collecting 2 is also collecting. And since Third Brother is dying, there is no need for the old man to go on living. His grand disciple spent 40 years on a fine coffin, and he ought to rest easy in it. Then I walk out of a shop I stood in for 43 years without looking back. The carriage is wide enough to lie down in, and I spend the first days of the road with a book open on my knee. Seonha praises a man of my vast knowledge for still keeping his nose in a book. He should have arranged a high-level monster beast as a mount, he explains. But anything showy might bring me trouble, so a proper welcome waits at the other end instead. I close the book and tell him to just ask whatever he came to ask. I stayed quiet before because I had no intention of wading into the swamp of his family's politics, but I have agreed now, so I will not be stingy. He smiles at being caught and does not argue. On a monster beast, the trip would take half a day, and half a day would leave him almost no time alone with me. A decade ago, I pulled him out of the monster beast mountain range and talked with him for one night, and he says that night was worth more than the rescue. Since he got his identity back, I have never discussed anything with him again, so he will not waste the road. He tidies his phrasing and says, one question has bothered him a long time. Everyone knows a person's energy is finite, and cultivators are no exception. Yet my cultivation is respectable, and on top of it I am fluent in alchemy, formations, medicine, geomancy, and a dozen other things. He wants to know how one man learned all of it, and stayed good at all of it. So I ask how old he is. Exactly 100, he says. That is real talent at his age, I tell him, and then I ask what he did with those 100 years. He does not follow, so I lay it out. Call his first 20 years a write-off, young and ignorant, which leaves 80. A year runs 365 days, so 80 years is better than 20,000 days and nights. For a mortal that can be an entire life, and for a cultivator it is worth far more, because mortals lose most of their hours to sickness, hunger, and exhaustion. A cultivator abstains from grain and lives on the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Mortal illnesses never touch him, and meditation replaces sleep. So after all that time I ask, what does he actually have? He thinks seriously before answering, which is more than most men would do. In 80 years he gained cultivation power and a beautiful Tao companion. That is an accurate summary, I tell him, and then I ask what else. A day holds 12 hours, and he did not spend every one of them on those 3 things. A great deal of it went into going out to enjoy himself, into romance, and into proving he could beat other people. I am no genius, and I never had a towering master. I simply picked up the time the rest of you threw away, nothing more. Cultivate the mind before the body, because a man whose state of mind is thin has no business expecting to sing his way up the path. He lets out a long breath and calls it a profound nothing more. Saying those words alone should shame every cultivator alive. Then he offers to have the kingdom receive me as a national scholar, and I wave it off, since my heart is not in that. The sheer cost he is paying to drag me out of seclusion means the situation in Jangan City is already grim, so I ask him bluntly how much longer his imperial father has. He sighs. His father is the strongest monarch in the history of the Hyunmu kingdom, but no cultivation and no divine ability has ever won an argument with the 5 declines of heaven and man. Less than a year of lifespan remains, and the throne has issued an edict promising the kingdom to whoever finds the location of the dragon lair. I frown at that. Emperor Joa has lived 2,300 years, and the kingdom has surely tried every method in existence to stretch that number. A man in his position hunting a burial site this urgently is not hunting a dragon lair. He is hunting a place that will let him live a lifetime in reverse, and places like that are not easy to find. Seongha smiles the way a man smiles when you say aloud the thing he has been avoiding. A place that easy to find, he says, would never have driven him to beg me out of seclusion. His imperial brothers have all secured expert help, and he has no confidence of beating them, and it was need not manners that made him disturb my quiet. Then he asks how much confidence I have. Not 10 parts, I tell him, but 5 or 6. The silence that follows is worth the trip. He has visited every reclusive master in the kingdom, and the answers were always no confidence, or half a part of confidence. Now a coffin seller in a carriage says 5 or 6. If he did not know my character, he would call it boasting to my face. He asks whether I truly mean it. I have confidence in finding the place, I say, but finding it is not the same as succeeding, and success depends on how much his kingdom is willing to pay. Living a lifetime in reverse is what every man with a short measure left desires, and the ones who manage it are so few they may as well not exist. He would do well to talk his father out of it. His face goes bitter because he knows the principle and has no way to move his father's will. He goes quiet after that, and I let him. 2,300 years is more than double the span of an ascent soul stage cultivator. Old men are shrewd and old horses are sly, and calling Jangan City a den of dragons and a tiger's lair would be understating it. Without the bronze ancient temple at the end of this road, nothing would make me touch the business. The Great Hall holds all 9 princes of the Hyunmu kingdom, and the man on the dragon throne looks younger than most of them. That is Emperor Jae-Hwa, the strongest emperor this kingdom ever produced, chin propped on one hand, smiling down at his sons like a man watching puppies. One prince steps out and announces that he has consulted many experts and combed every famous mountain and river in the kingdom. He has found a dragon lair which will surely buy his father another lifetime. The rest refuse to be left behind and recite how hard they searched. Only the eldest says nothing, because the eldest's helper is working through the fruit plate like a man who has not eaten in a week. Seung-ha leans over and suggests, with visible strain, that perhaps we could eat later and introduce our dragon lair now. I swallow the spirit fruit in my mouth and tell him it is a banquet, and that eating is the main business at a banquet. In any case, the thing he ought to be worried about is not the dragon lair. He asks what else there could possibly be. So I roll my eyes and point out that his father is about to die, and that all 9 sons are cheerfully shopping for the man's burial plot in front of him. He gets it instantly. The first thing his son is supposed to show is that he cannot bear the loss, and even without feeling it, he is expected to perform it. He asks softly whether it is too late. Not too late to mend the fold after the sheep is gone, I tell him, and I advise him to lay it on thick. He is out of his seat instantly, sprinting, dropping into a slide on his knees, driving his forehead into the floor and wailing that he cannot bear to part with his father. The other 8 princes have no idea what just happened to them. On the throne, Emperor Jua turns his gaze to the man demolishing the fruit plate. 2,300 years buys ears that miss nothing in a room this size. He knows the mind of every son he has, but the helper the eldest dragged in seems to be new. He tells Seung-ha that a great man does not cry and wail, and asks what kind of decorum that is. Seung-ha cries louder, and answers that a man's tears fall only when his heart is truly breaking. The acting is genuinely superb. The emperor smiles a little and lifts his son upright on a stream of spiritual energy. He understands the filial piety, he says, but parting in life and death is simply the way of heaven. Then he waves a hand, and a servant sets an enormous second fruit plate in front of me. I grin at him with every tooth I own and thank Emperor Jua by name, then go back to work on it, pocketing a few of the better ones for later. The princes have nothing to say. I can hear all of them wondering how a man could be so shameless, and underneath that, why none of them thought of it first. With the performance over, the emperor comes to the point. His time is running out, and he wants a place of true immortal fated affinity where he can live another lifetime. 10 years ago, he promised the kingdom to whoever found one, and today the results are due. The 8 princes glance at their experts, and the experts come forward one after another, describing their dragon lairs with enormous confidence. Even Seung-ha starts looking envious, because some of those descriptions sound magnificent. His helper remains occupied with the fruit plate. Half an hour goes by and 8 dragon lairs have been laid out, and every eye swings to me. The second prince asks with open disgust where his eldest brother dug up such a rustic villager. Their father's 1,000-year plan is at its crucial moment, and parading a man like this through the hall humiliates the kingdom. Seung-ha starts to answer. I finish the last spirit fruit first, take my time about it, and ask whether he has never heard of saving the best for last. The strong always show up at the end, so there is no need for anyone to panic. Then I look up at the throne and ask Emperor Jua for a map, as large and detailed as one can be made. He moves one finger, and 5 strong men haul in a rolled map and open it until it covers half the palace floor. I walk it slowly, marking the 8 dragon lairs onto it one by one. When I am finished, I cup my hands and tell the emperor to forgive my bluntness. In my eyes, those 8 places are all trash, and if he wants another lifetime, there is one location in this kingdom with even a sliver of possibility. The experts detonate, demanding to know what sect produced me so they can go and educate my master. I pick at my ear while they shout. Then I apologize and explain that my sect is not skilled in finding dragon lairs, and that I taught myself. My main trade is selling coffins, with dragon lair hunting as a side business and funerals handled start to finish. The hall goes completely still. They had all been waiting for the first prince's mystery helper to reveal some towering background, and what they got was a self-taught coffin seller. The other 8 princes seize it with both hands, telling their father that their eldest brother produced this man to sabotage the imperial plan. Whatever loyalty he shows outwardly, the throne has probably been his goal for years. Emperor Jawa does not get angry. He looks at me with interest, remarks that this gentleman's profession is quite interesting, and asks how he should address me. I tell him my surname is Jin and my given name Jiangsang, and that his majesty may simply call me Jiangsang. He repeats it and says it is a good name. Then he asks me to explain myself, since those 8 men are famous geomancy masters and dismissing them so lightly seems inappropriate. Everyone in the hall starts sneering, with the emperor asking questions personally. A country bumpkin is not going to slip past his Dharma eye, and the road ahead of me is expected to end badly. So I explain. The dragon lair His Majesty wants is a place that can reverse a life. If a miracle like that were easy to locate, no cultivator anywhere would be troubled by lifespan again. Whether a living being can reverse a life at all remains a legend. Those 8 men began boasting the instant they were asked, which is proof enough that every word out of them was a lie, and lies are trash. The Emperor nods and allows there is some truth in that, then asks where my chosen dragon lair sits. I search the map and put my finger down on a blank patch. Within 100,000 miles, I tell him, that is the only place that might let him live a lifetime in reverse. Every expression in the hall changes at once. Seongha's is the worst, because the place under my finger is where the bronze ancient temple clue points, and he has good reason to suspect I chose it on purpose. A white-bearded old man calls it absurd. The barren ancient forbidden ground is a forbidden land recognized by the entire world, he shouts, and no dragon lair could possibly exist there. There is a cold sweat on his forehead while he says it. Since he never stops talking about taboos, I ask, does he actually know what a taboo is? A taboo is a taboo and needs no explanation, he says. Then he stops talking to me altogether and asks His Majesty to execute me for maliciously steering the throne toward that place. The Emperor does not spare him a glance. He asks me instead why I would choose a land of certain death, and notes that from my tone I appear to know what a taboo is. I laugh gently and say, Your Majesty is joking, because taboos have resisted explanation throughout history. All I ever managed was a few words for it. It cannot be cognized, cannot be defined, cannot be described, cannot be observed. Anything carrying those 4 traits is what the world calls a taboo. He turns that over and says my words reveal the terror of the thing better than most. Then he asks the obvious question, if I understand taboos better than the rest of them, why choose that place anyway? Because a blessed land belongs to whoever is capable of taking it. I smack my lips and look down at the blank patch on the map. Before His Majesty was born, there were other powers on this land, troubled by lifespan exactly as he is, and they made exactly the choice he is making now. Taboos cannot be described, but everybody knows one thing about them, which is their power. That power has reached a height where no living creature dares even name it, and beings that strong do not live in poor places. A dragon lair capable of reversing a life cannot be judged by ordinary rules, so those 8 sites are perfectly good and nowhere near enough. To reverse a life, a man has to embrace death to find life, and walk into the barren, ancient, forbidden ground on his own feet. My voice carries in the hall, and then it stops, and every heart in the room is slamming. Nobody expected the country bumpkin to be that reckless out loud. If His Majesty takes the advice, the whole Hyunmu kingdom walks toward its own destruction. Nothing moves for a long time. Then the Emperor says from the throne that he is a little tired today and that they may all withdraw. From this day forward, he adds, Jin Zhongsang is Imperial Advisor of the Hyunmu kingdom, free to come and go anywhere within its borders. He rises and leaves, and 8 sets of princely knuckles go white. The title alone would be enormous. Free movement is something else, because it covers the treasure vault and the cultivation technique secret chamber, rooms only Emperor Jawa had ever entered. Now there is a second man with the key, and he is an outsider, and the sons cannot be blamed for the color of their faces. So while the entire hall is busy being jealous, I shout at the doorway the Emperor just walked through, that he cannot do this to me. I already agreed with the first prince to hold no position here. That leaves everybody with nothing at all to say. One of them finally grinds out that only His Majesty's regard is keeping me alive, and that if I do not want the opportunity, I am welcome to hand it over. Songha catches me strolling the palace grounds after the banquet and demands to know why I chose the barren, ancient, forbidden ground. I tell him I already gave the reason, that only that place might let his father achieve a reverse rebirth. He calls the reason impeccable and says he still believes there are others. I scratch my head and admit I am disappointed, having thought him clever enough to see the shape of this by now. Then I ask who is the strongest man in the Hyunmu kingdom. His imperial father, obviously, and the same answer covers who knows the kingdom best. Its territory has more than doubled under him, and every mile was conquered in person and measured under his own feet. There it is, I say, and spread my hands. The strongest man in the kingdom, and the man who knows it best. Does he really imagine such a man does not already know which place could give him a reverse rebirth? Songha stops walking and asks whether the barren, ancient, forbidden ground was his father's intention all along. Yes, as first prince he knows the history better than I do, so let him consider it. His father has lived 2,300 years, and for the first 2,200 he had no children and no Dao companion. Then in the last 100, Seongha was born, and 8 brothers after him. Something a man avoided for 22 centuries suddenly happens inside 1 century, which does not look like appetite. It looks like a man arranging matters for after his death. Seongha half sees it now. He asks whether his father began preparing 100 years ago, probably longer, I tell him, because a reverse rebirth is harder than climbing into heaven, and nobody should open their mouth about it without 200 or 300 years behind them. Sending 9 sons out to hunt dragon lairs was a test, and nothing else. Entrusting a reverse rebirth to 9 children, not one of whom has reached a full century, would be a tremendous joke. I keep strolling. He hurries after me and asks whether I can persuade his father to give it up, since one mistake there could take the whole kingdom down. How would I persuade him? I ask. I am an outsider, and this is a son's work. We arrive at a pavilion while he is still chewing on that, and it turns out to be where the kingdom keeps its cultivation techniques. The Hyeonmu pavilion goes up into the clouds. A collection that size is the greatest temptation this world has ever put in front of me. I ask whether he wants to come in and look. He gives me a strange smile and declines, saying that without his father's permission even he cannot walk in casually. Inside I may look, he warns, but I must not touch anything, because the moment I touch something it is very likely that. He does not finish the sentence. A dark figure has appeared with the emperor's order. Jinjiang Sang may freely take whatever he desires, and no one is to obstruct him, and Prince Ja Seongha is to escort him around the palace until he is satisfied. Seongha stands there with his mouth slightly open. Freely take. His father must be joking, because this is not how anyone treats a worthy stranger. I can watch the thought arrive on his face, the one where he wonders whether I might be his father's illegitimate son, since his own sons have never been handed anything like this. I thank His Majesty with a chuckle and drag the dazed prince inside. The shelves go up out of sight and my mouth actually waters. Seongha recovers enough to ask cautiously whether my surname might not happen to be Jua. I roll my eyes and ask him not to joke about other people's ancestry. My surname is Jin and there is no doubt about it. I am not His Majesty's illegitimate son and I am not anybody's biological elder brother. While I complain at him, I am pulling books off shelves, and he keeps going. Why would his father favor a man who is not his child, and is guessing the imperial mind really enough to buy all this? I do not answer because by then something else has come into view. A book the size of a house is standing open in front of me. Seongha tells me respectfully that it is the history of the Hyunmu kingdom, holding every event since the founding. That, I tell him, is a very good thing to find. I rise into the air until I am level with the open page, and the page that happens to be open happens to carry the records of the Bronze Ancient Temple. I point at them and ask whether this is where he got his clue. He says yes. Not long ago he came to fetch the 9 Revolutions mysterious skill in the hope of luring me out, and he stumbled across this by accident. I nod and remark that His Majesty went to a great deal of trouble to invite me out. He does not follow at all and asks when his father ever invited me. So I ask whether he truly believes he found the clue himself. This book is thicker than a man is tall and holds more content than a life could read. And the one page standing open in it records the exact thing I have hunted for decades. That is a great deal of coincidence for one afternoon. He asks who was behind it. Who else could it be, I say. A man who comes calling once a year for 10 straight years is behaving strangely enough to be noticed. And once His Majesty noticed me, he looked into my background. Then, perhaps out of nothing more than curiosity, he gave his son a gentle push and moved me all the way to Jangan City. Seongha protests that he told nobody but me about the Bronze Ancient Temple. True, I say, but the moment he began investigating, the news leaked on its own. Investigating means asking people questions or pulling down ancient texts, and in a small patch of ground like Jangan City there is nothing a prince can do that the throne does not hear about. He has no answer for that. I can see him quietly deciding that he has been a child this entire time. He is silent a good while before asking what I think his father will do next. What else can the man do, I say. He is sitting somewhere deciding whether he can stomach the price I set. Seongha asks whether I even know the odds of entering the barren ancient forbidden ground. There is a chance, I tell him, and it is not a big one. 0.5%. But he should not sneer at it, because to buy that 0.5% his imperial father could hand over the entire Hyunmu pavilion and still walk away having robbed me. Then I wave him toward the door and remind him to have every ancient text in this building copied out for me. He does not argue, since he already understands that this has stopped being a matter he can touch. After he leaves, I settle into the historical records and read for a solid month. The kingdom sends cultivation resources every day, and I accept all of it without protest, and never once mention the barren ancient forbidden ground. I am lying across a page bigger than a bed, working through a spirit fruit many people would kill for, when a voice beside me observes that I am truly patient. Emperor Jaehwa has been standing in the Hyunmu pavilion for some unknown length of time. I bow and greet him. He ignores the greeting and looks at the histories instead, remarking that I have read a great deal in a month and clearly enjoy it. I tell him His Majesty has a discerning wisdom eye, and that I have no vices except books, because books hand me knowledge without end. He strokes the pages almost fondly. Then he lists what he has given me: the Hyunmu Pavilion, the seat of Imperial Advisor, and every resource he sent. He asks whether a man still this greedy after that much generosity really believes he would not dare kill him. His gaze comes down cold. I grin at him. What His Majesty says is incorrect, I tell him, because although I have taken many things, none of them is what I actually want. A transaction is a matter of fairness, and forced buying and selling do not qualify. My life sits entirely inside one of his thoughts, and I am still certain he will neither kill me nor force me. He makes a short, cold sound in his throat and asks where the confidence comes from. The barren, ancient, forbidden ground, I say. He knows its terror better than I ever will, and a man walking in there cannot afford one accident, which means everyone he brings has to be absolutely loyal. If he drags me in by the collar, I imagine he would feel a small draft on the back of his neck the entire way. He is quiet a moment. Then he tells me to state my conditions. I ask His Majesty to help me kill someone, and the 0.5% will come into his hands in the course of killing that person. He finds that interesting, since anyone my strength and my wits cannot kill is evidently not a simple character. Then he adds that although I have switched to the Hyunmu Kingdom's path of cultivation, another path is still detectable underneath it. Unless he is mistaken, I come from the Great Cheon Dynasty, 30,000 miles away. His son has praised me endlessly, and he wonders whether I would tell him about my past. So I tell him. The story begins 80 years ago, and I give him the whole of it exactly as it happened, my Grand Master and me and everything the man did. I leave out Ilyu and the others entirely. Standing in front of somebody whose lifespan is running out, mentioning that I already solved the problem holds no appeal. After the battle in the Night Moon Country's forbidden land, I fled here and stayed 43 years. The Emperor comes away more curious than he started, finding it harder rather than easier to decide what kind of man I am. Anyone who crosses thousands of miles and survives one disaster after another, purely to bury an old acquaintance, ought to be loyal and righteous to the bone. Yet when this one described his sect being slaughtered, his eyes stayed perfectly calm. The two halves do not fit together. He asks me outright what my purpose is in risking his displeasure to have him kill my own Grand Master, and whether it is revenge. No, I tell him. Asking His Majesty to act is only me keeping an old promise. When I left the Night Moon Country, I said I would bury the man, and what I say, I do. That makes him laugh out loud and call me a man of his word. Then he sharpens. By my account, there are 18 bronze ancient temples, connected to one another in some fashion, and one of them stands inside the barren ancient forbidden ground. He supposes that is where my 0.5% comes from. Exactly, I say. He asks whether it does not frighten me to hand him that secret, since he might do what my Grandmaster did and reach for the inauspicious power sleeping beneath a bronze ancient temple. I tell him calmly that the power underneath is not my concern. An old friend disappeared inside a bronze ancient temple, and all I want is to confirm that she is safe. Then I wait. He says my request has made it impossible for him to refuse. The barren ancient forbidden ground is soaked in danger, and he will not walk past even a hair's increase in his odds. We depart tomorrow, he tells me, because he does not have much time. He turns to go, and I ask his back whether he truly has confidence, since that Grand Master of mine was already at soul transformation perfection 50 years ago. His step pauses. He asks me how vast the Hyunmu Kingdom is. The Night Moon Country and the Great Cheon Dynasty stacked together barely make half of it. Then he asks whether my so-called soul transformation perfection would dare set foot in the barren ancient forbidden ground at all. Its terror is past describing, and even those standing above soul transformation would not let themselves think about the place. This kingdom was not always large, he says. What it is now he built piece by piece, and he has annihilated 2 countries the size of the Great Cheon Dynasty. What those above soul transformation do not dare to do. He dares. Then he is gone. I look off toward the Great Cheon Dynasty and tell my Grandmaster that 50 years on, his humble disciple is coming to keep his promise. The old man is going to be very surprised. The warship is the size of a mountain and it lifts slowly, and I stand at the rail looking toward the Great Cheon Dynasty. 50 years went past in a blink, and the old faces come up out of the dark behind my eyes on their own. The kind, timid little monk. The 9th senior brother who followed me around like a shadow stitched to my heel. 3rd brother with his ruined body. And the small girl who never once called me anything but Big Brother Jang Sang. Something moves through me that I have no name for, and I let it pass. Seungha comes over and asks what I am looking at, and the question pulls me back onto the deck. Old friends, I tell him. He points out that the Great Cheon Dynasty is 30,000 miles away, and asks how I could possibly see them. Old friends live in the chest, I say, so the eyes have nothing to do with it. He thinks about that seriously and gets nowhere. As he is today, he cannot understand this feeling, and when he has walked through long years of his own and turns to look back, the feeling will find him. He is not a bad kid, and his mind is quick, so since we have met, I will give him 12% off, and when the day comes, I will personally be his undertaker. His face drops off his skull. He is 100 years old, which in this kingdom means he has barely finished growing up, and by his arithmetic, a man with my depth of experience has to be past 200. That puts me in the queue well ahead of him. He recovers enough to thank me and suggests that where coffins are concerned, we might wait a while. I give the forced smile a flat look and go back to my cabin. Even a man like Emperor Jua has a day when the number runs out, and Songha will not be dodging his either. For me, time is not a thing that matters much. Sangchang Temple. Li Gyumsu coughs until his whole frame shakes, and in front of him stand 8 graves holding his masters and senior brothers. The temple that used to be elegant has gone to rot, and the couplet I brushed onto its pillars has faded until the strokes are hard to read. Song Wansan finds him there and asks, half scolding, why he has come again. Gyumsu smiles and says that is his own mind to use. Wansan is the master of Songchang Temple now, the famous invincible Taoist, and holding back the night moon country rests on his shoulders. Gyumsu is only a man about to die, and even if the enemy found him, there is nothing more to take. Wansan has no answer. Long ago, the little junior brother of Songchang Temple walked out meaning to bring the master's bodies home, and the years piled up. Just as Wansan was ready to give up hope, Master Ilhu came back from wherever he had vanished to. He brought the princess of the night moon country and the bodies of the masters. He did not bring Jiangsang. After a while, Wansan asks whether Gyumsang will ever come back. Gyumsang says of course he will come back, because he is coming to collect his body and be his undertaker. Little junior brother keeps his promises, so death being close means the man is nearly here. He looks off into the distance as though the familiar figure is already on the road. Then he leans back tiredly against Reverend Wansan's tombstone and waves his junior brother off. Wansan has burdens of his own and no business sitting all day with a dying man. Gyumsu is about to go and see the masters, and he has a great deal saved up to tell them. As for what happened in the Night Moon Country's forbidden ground, he tells Wansan to abandon the idea of ever learning it. Master Ilhu will not tell him, and the Wanan princess will not tell him, because the 3 of them agreed to carry it into their graves. Wansan goes quiet again, and this time he does not chase the answer the way the younger version of him would have. The grown man understands that knowing the truth of some things does nobody any good. Alone, Gyumsu strokes Reverend Wansan's tombstone and asks his master softly how a perfectly good Songcheng temple ended up like this, and whether power and lifespan are worth more than everything else. His eyes fill with grief. Ilhu told him the whole truth the day he returned. Gyumsu could not make himself accept that the kind old grandmaster he had bowed to since boyhood had murdered his masters and senior brothers. Cruel things do not stop being true, because a man cannot swallow them. Having no other option, Gyumsu and Ilhu made their agreement and buried it. As far as Sangcheng Temple is concerned, perfected Okwa died not long after the National War began. The warship flies for a full month, and the Great Qian dynasty comes closer every day, and news comes in with it. The dynasty has been swallowed whole by the Night Moon Country, and what remains of its forces are scraping out in existence in the corners. There is more. The monster king of the Night Moon Country was killed by the Undertaker, and the new master of Songcheng Temple has boxing skills nobody can match, which is why they call him the Invincible Taoist. Seongha reads the reports over and over and asks whether this Undertaker is really so formidable, since killing a Monster King silently inside Monster Clan territory is not a small thing. I am from the Great Qian dynasty, he points out, so surely I have heard something. I click my tongue and tell him I know the Undertaker, and that he need not worry, because the man will not get in the Hyunmu kingdom's way. Seongha immediately disagrees. This person's movements are a mystery and his character is impossible to read. For all anyone knows, he is a moody lunatic who kills for pleasure, because why else choose a title that inauspicious? Precautions are necessary, he says. I tell him the Undertaker is my nickname, and ask when exactly I became a moody lunatic who kills for pleasure. It takes him a moment to find his voice, and then he asks how I could possibly be the Undertaker. Why could I not be, I ask. He should not forget that I sell coffins and handle funerals from beginning to end, so a man who specializes in collecting bodies being called the Undertaker is hardly a mystery. He has nothing to say to that, because the words sound insane and the logic is airtight. So I give him one more thing to keep. When people meet a piece of information, they exaggerate it, and they pick whichever explanation flatters them most. Passed through enough mouths, the original truth comes out the far end unrecognizable. To find the truth inside a pile of legends, a man has to be calm and look at the essence of the thing. Then the past can be assembled out of a handful of clues. Then I call up my flying sword and step off the warship. Songha shouts after me, asking where I am going. I am no good at fighting, I tell him, so I will sit this part out. The Hyunmu kingdom is strong, but it will not wipe out the Night Moon Country overnight, and I have things to take care of first. By the time the words reach him, I am already gone. Emperor Jua appears at his son's shoulder, while Seonghai is still staring at the empty sky. The prince hesitates, then asks why his father did not stop me, and whether he is not afraid I will simply run. His father answers without much interest that his son is intelligent, but that his knowledge is still thin. More precisely, he cannot yet tell one man apart from another man. On the day he can look at Jinjiang Sang and see the person, the Hyunmu kingdom will be safe in his hands. It is only a pity that there is not enough time left, and the rest of that road he will have to walk alone. Seongha's face tightens. He asks whether his father truly must go into the barren ancient forbidden ground, and whether there is no other way in this world to stretch a lifespan. The emperor smiles at that. His son is too much like him, he says, hungry to learn and contemptuous of everything. When he was young, he was certain nothing in the world could beat him, and he did not spare a thought for lifespan. He believed a man should be outstanding while alive, and a heroic ghost when dead, and that clinging to life was contemptible. Then he lived past 2,000 years, and he changed. Seongha lowers his head and offers no opinion. His father keeps going anyway. Of all the brothers, he says, this is the one who despises his father most. This is the one who believes the man who once looked down on the world has turned coward. Seongha is on his knees before the sentence finishes. His father does not stop him, and does not stop talking. That view is correct, and it is also wrong. Correct because at his age he ought to hold exactly that view. Wrong because he is underestimating his father badly. When ordinary people swear to love, the emperor says they reach for seas drying up and rocks decaying, because in their understanding rocks do not decay and the sea will never dry. But a man who has watched a rock crumble slowly into dust and watched a boundless sea become a wide plain learns something else. Time is the great enemy of every living thing, strong enough to change everything a man once held as truth. His son knows that facing death takes courage. What his son does not know is that after truly understanding death, still reaching for long life takes far more courage than that. Then he asks whether Seongha, standing in his place, would have the courage to chase long life the way his father is chasing it. Seongha thinks about it for a long time, and then he says it one word at a time. This son does not have that courage. His father laughs and tells him that lacking it is not necessarily a bad thing, and that at least his future will be steady. Then he tells him that if it is at all possible, he must lean on Jinjeong heavily in the years ahead. Seongha asks why. His father says it is because that man possesses something he himself does not have. 10 years ago, when the prince went into the Monster Beast mountain range to train and was rescued by a coffin seller, his father stood beside him the entire time and he never noticed. The emperor heard every word of that night's conversation, and from that night on, he was interested. He watched the coffin seller for 10 years afterward. A decade is nothing to a cultivator, but it is more than enough for a cultivator to change in some visible way. After 10 full years, Jinjeong is precisely the man he was at the start, as though time does not touch him. Cultivators hunt variables, his father says, because only a variable breaks a bottleneck. A country hunts stability, because only stability lets it last. He is emperor and also a cultivator, and the hour has come for him to hunt a variable. His son has a long road ahead and needs stability, and with that man beside him the road will be far smoother. Seongha hesitates and points out that Jinjeong does not appear interested in power. That, his father tells him, is his own problem to solve. A father cannot arrange everything, and some things a son must do himself. Then he turns and leaves, and the prince stays on his knees with his brows drawn tight. Songcheong Temple, and Lee Gyamsu is lying on the ground with a freshly dug pit beside him. The one eye he had left has gone blind. He is closing it for the last time when the sound of leaves crushed underfoot reaches him, and he struggles up onto an elbow and asks whether that is little junior brother. I look at what has become of the carefree third brother I knew, and I press my lips together and I tell him quietly that it is me. He hears the voice and smiles and says he knew I would come, because I always keep the promises I make. I get an arm under him and lift him. Then I tell him he is about to die, so we should change him into his burial clothes quickly before the body goes cold and makes a nuisance of it. He shoves my hand away with the last of his strength. He may be dying, he informs me, but he is not dead yet, and after 50 years apart can he not talk to me for a moment first? I roll my eyes at him. It has come to this and he still has some obsession left unresolved. I tell him, and he knows perfectly well that I hate trouble. Collecting bodies and burying them is within my range, while granting last wishes is not. That puts a little life back into him. He demands to know whether his own third brother looks like a man who cannot let go, and swears that anything he failed to finish while alive he will not be dumping on anyone. He only wants to praise me before he dies, and he asks whether even that is forbidden. I am smiling before he finishes. Of course it is allowed, I tell him, since praise out of third brother is a rare crop. Praise is encouragement, he says, and I should not let it make me arrogant. We talk the way we used to talk, and the smiling does not last long. And then the quiet comes back and sits down with us. After a while, he drags his hand across the ground until his fingers find Reverend Wanson's tombstone. Touching the carved words, a single tear the color of weak rust runs out of his blind eye. A man gets a lifetime and a plant gets an autumn, he says. However much weight you threw around while breathing, in the end you do not get to be separated from a few boards of wood. Cultivation techniques, divine weapons, treasures, all of it is passing cloud. Years ago, when I took the master's lightning-struck wood, and made a coffin out of it. He thought I was being childish, and now he finally understands. Inside Sangcheng Temple, the one who saw things most clearly was the boy nobody took seriously. His lips shake for a long time after that. Then he pulls himself back together and says he is finished with the sad things and would like to see the coffin I brought him. I take a brand new one out of the system space. High quality golden silk cedar, I tell him, and golden silk cedar holds a body 1,000 years without letting it rot, so he should touch it. I walk him to it, and he runs his fingers along the grain and nods, and says it was not for nothing that he spoiled me. Then he asks whether I have prepared the Grand Master's coffin. Prepared it too, I tell him. 1,000-year lightning-struck peachwood, carved over every inch with every formation I have ever learned, guaranteed to keep the Grand Master from ever climbing back out. When the time comes, I will bury the old man in, with the rest of them, so they can all discuss the past together at length. Jiamsu laughs until it takes everything he has, and says little junior brother is still the only one who thinks the thing all the way through. Then he straightens his back, smooths the wrinkles from his robe, and stays in that posture forever. I look at what is left and handle it calmly, because this is my trade. I set the coffin into the pit he dug for himself and raise a headstone over it, and the name I carve is the same one I have been carving for a long time now, The Undertaker. I stand in front of the stone I just set and take out a jar of wine. This is 100-flower wine, brewed the old way. Back in the limitless secret realm, I held Wansun back and would not let him brawl with the others, and by the custom of that place I was certain to be scolded. So I brewed 100-flower wine to save my skin. Half was meant for the master in the hope he would go easy on me, and the other half was meant to bribe third brother into putting in a good word. Then we came out of the limitless secret realm. One thing happened after another, and the jar waited until today. That is not entirely a loss, because 70 years of settling has lifted the taste, and the two of them are going to like it. I pour it out in front of third brother's grave and Reverend Wanson's. One jar between two people is stingy, I admit, but I made only 10 jars and I intend to drink the rest, so they will have to make do. Neither of them can climb out from under there and hit me for it. Then I turn and walk out of the ruined Sangcheng Temple, raising a hand behind me toward the 9 graves without turning around. I still have to bring the Grand Master around to see them, so I will be going first. There is nothing like sorrow anywhere in my voice, because in my chest it is only a short goodbye to some old friends. The horns of the Hyunmu kingdom sound not long after. The Night Moon country swallowed the great Qian dynasty, but the swallowing hollowed both of them out. And against a kingdom this strong, it can only give ground. Emperor Jua offers no reasons and wastes no words. He ignores every attempt at negotiation and sweeps the board flat, and inside a single month the Night Moon country is broken. Both bronze ancient temple sites end up ringed by his armies. Seonghwa delivers the report to his father. The limitless secret realm is under their control, and only the Night Moon country's forbidden ground, held by perfected Okwa, is left. Also, he adds, the people from Cheonbul Temple are asking for an audience. The emperor says without much interest to surround the forbidden ground and hold, and to let the Cheonbul Temple people wait. A thing that has a beginning must have an end, and this business started with Jin Jiangsang and ought to finish in his hands. Then he looks off into the distance, remarking that it is quite a coincidence, since he has only just said the name and the man has arrived. A speck of light appears in the sky, swells, and lands on the deck. I cup my hands and ask His Majesty's pardon, since Jiangsang went to deal with private matters and has come back late. His mouth curves. Not late at all, he says, and my timing is perfect. My Grand Master is trapped in the forbidden ground waiting to be buried. The old man does have some skill, since it took 2 moves to blow his clone apart, and my old acquaintance appears to know I am back. So which will it be? He asks. The Grand Master first, or the old acquaintance? The old acquaintance, obviously. I grin and explain that my Grand Master may be nothing in His Majesty's eyes, but he is still well beyond me. If the old man lashes out with everything he has left on his way down, I cannot survive it. Far better that the two of us work separately. Emperor Jae-Wa laughs and levels a finger at me and says, this steady way of doing things is exactly what he appreciates. Fine, he says. He will leave my Grand Master one breath, so that Grand Master and Grand Disciple can enjoy a proper reunion. Then he is standing above the forbidden ground, and he closes his right fist and swings it down. A fist print the size of a valley opens in the earth, and every mountain within 100 miles is beaten into mud. I stare at the crater from the deck. Is he really that fierce? Emperor Jua throws his punch, and a giant cauldron comes howling out of the Night Moon country forbidden ground to meet it. I keep well back and watch the two of them take the sky apart. The cultivation world really is dangerous, I say out loud, and it is a mercy I never developed any taste for fighting. Then I turn my back on the ruin of the horizon and fly toward the 3 figures waiting at the edge of it. 50 years is nothing to me and a long while to everyone else, and the reunion lands on them before I touch down. Song Wansan reaches me first, calling me Brother Jang Song and telling me he always knew I would come back. He wears a proper Taoist robe now. I tell him the little follower from back then has finally grown up, and that third brother's teaching did not go to waste. Some people you can watch age 80 years and still find the boy sitting behind the face. Wana Wool stands a little apart, beautiful with something wild kept in it, waiting to speak. She asks what I plan to do next, and I tell her the answer has not changed, that I walk my own road. She looks at the Hyunmu Kingdom's army massed below and asks, heavier now, whether I am leaving again. The reluctance is in her tone rather than in the words. It is not really leaving, I tell her, since every person alive has work of their own and a destination belonging to nobody else. Song Wonsan wants a better answer. His voice climbs while he points out that the trouble is finished, and Songchong Temple is a field of broken stone waiting to be raised again. Then he asks whether I am truly washing my hands of it. I put a hand on his shoulder. Rebuilding Sangchang Temple is his mission and not mine, and destinies are not interchangeable, some people taking root while others wander. The Tao sect makes much of the word for fated affinity, so I use it. Mine with all of them has run out, and running out is when a man says goodbye. He clenches his fists and says nothing more. The whole temple worked this out about me long before I did. I did well enough by them, and still nobody ever felt any intention in me to stay. Song Wonsan looked at Sangchang Temple and saw home, while I saw somewhere to set my feet down a while. A man passes through many places and grows fond of more than a few, and still the only place that can stop him is home. Sangchang Temple was never that, so the leaving was always scheduled. I turn to Master Ilyu, whose face is arranged into perfect calm. I remind the little monk that I have known him longest and ask whether he means to try to make me stay. He rolls his eyes and says with real contempt that if Jin Jiang Sang wants to leave, there is nobody alive who can keep him. They are the flowers and the grass and the trees of this land, he says, while I am a bird that stopped here a while. No matter how long a bird sits, it always flies, and he has been expecting this day for decades. Behind us, the fighting stops. I tell Ilhu his Buddhist learning has come along and that he should keep at it and make a proper master of himself. Then I tell them the business over there is finished, and I am going to collect the body of an old friend. I walk toward the forbidden ground without looking back, which is easier for everyone. All three watch me go with the same reluctance, except that the reluctance in Wanwol's eyes has something else folded into it. Ilhu tells her to stop staring, since this one will not stay for anybody. Then he reminds her that for 50 years she has been announcing she meant to beat me senseless and settle the old humiliation, and asks why she is not moving now. She answers coldly that my strength is very high and she is no match for me at present. He offers to help, pointing out that I am bad at fighting and that the two of them together would stand a chance. She tells him Buddhism is supposed to be about compassion, that his mouth is full of malice, and that he is not far off becoming a demon. Then she turns and goes. She stops halfway and asks whether she will ever see me again. Ilhu tells her it is hard to say, though if she lives a little longer there is still a chance. After that she is gone entirely. Perhaps it dates back to the day her hair went black, but somewhere along the line she filed me away as an interesting person, and never took me out again. The Night Moon Country Forbidden Ground is a landscape of craters now. I carry a magnificent coffin through it, and set it down before the bronze ancient temple hard enough to shake the dust. Perfected Okhwa is still pinned under the temple where the emperor left him. I ask my grandmaster what he thinks of the coffin his disciple built for him. He looks it over and says it is not bad, and that he can tell a great deal of effort went into it. After I slipped away from him last time he carried a vague unease around, he admits, though he did not expect me back this soon. I glance at Emperor Jawa, who was walking slow circles around the temple and studying it. There was nothing else I could have done, I tell my grandmaster, since he is so very strong, and I ask how a man like me was supposed to send him off alone. Then I ask whether he will answer a few questions now that matters have come to this. He says yes. My first question is why he came to the Night Moon Country when the limitless secret realm has a bronze ancient temple of its own. He tells me the thing suppressed there was already destroyed, so he went looking and found this one. My second question is whether he regrets killing my master and the others, and I ask it looking straight into his eyes. I want the true answer more than the polite one. He takes a long time. Then he sighs and says it was only a little hardship. For a man who cultivates the Tao, he says, a small sacrifice is ordinary in the pursuit of the great Tao of long life. If he ever escapes, then even eating bitter lotus will taste sweet. I laugh at that, and I laugh happily, because it is a genuinely good line. It is well said, I tell him, and his Tao heart is firm and his disciple impressed. Since matters stand this way, his disciple will now see him off on his last journey. Emperor Jua appears beside me as I finish speaking. My Grand Master looks up at the man who beat him without a trace of fear. If he had not been trapped first, he says, none of this would have been anywhere near so easy. Emperor Jua nods as though it were a fair point. With another 1,000 years or so, he says, his fellow Taoist might become a real opponent. and it is a pity he will not live that long. Then he asks quite casually what the enormous hand in the temple carvings represents. My grandmaster laughs and says of course he knows, and asks whether the emperor imagines he would tell, and whether the emperor would dare believe him anyway. Emperor Jowa agrees that he would not dare. A single beam of light leaves the emperor's hand, and a small blood hole opens in my grandmaster's forehead. He falls, and with him goes the last thing holding the bronze ancient temple up, so the mass begins to sink. Emperor Jawa pours out divine power to hold it in place, and I use the gap to snatch the corpse clear. The temple comes down and seals the blood pool and its ominous power for good. The emperor settles his aura on one long breath. Even for him, that was strenuous work. I lay my grandmaster in the coffin and ask His Majesty whether he got anything out of it. He says he did. There should be a teleportation array inside every bronze ancient temple, he tells me, with some kind of connection running between them, though he cannot say what kind while the one here is destroyed. Everything rests on the temple in the limitless secret realm now, and if that array still works, entering the barren ancient forbidden ground might genuinely be possible. He came into this expecting a small help, and has found something much larger. Then he throws the stone coffin down in front of me and tells me it is mine. That coffin is the reason I walked out of this place alive 50 years ago. I thank him, put it away, and am in a good enough mood afterward to ask an idle question. Has His Majesty ever heard of the 100 Defeats Immortal Venerable? A figure from 2,000 years back. He says he has. At 10 years old, he was hearing legends about the man, and even then the man had been dead 2,000 years. The writing on my stone coffin comes from a dynasty, 2,000 years gone, readable to him only because in his childhood it was not yet far away. I do the arithmetic twice, because it does not want to sit down the first time. The legends were already 2,000 years old when a boy heard them, and that boy has since been alive long enough to shatter kingdoms. So the 100 Defeats Immortal Venerable is a man from 4,000 years ago. I ask how strong someone like that would have been. He does not know, he says, and points out that with nothing but a phantom, the man suppressed both the ominous power here and my grandmaster. He adds that if the bronze ancient temple were not sitting on it, borrowing the power of this place would appeal to him greatly. So he never mentioned the ominous power because he was above wanting it. He never mentioned it because he could not lift it. I keep that thought where it belongs and tell him I still have a grandmaster to bury. He tells me to go and to be quick, since prying the bronze ancient temple out of the limitless secret realm will not take long. Half a month later, the Hyunmu kingdom has that temple out of the ground by main force. I stand on the deck of the flying vessel, look down at the land of the great Xian dynasty, and feel something turn over in me. I have been walking around on that land for nearly 200 years. Back then, it never occurred to me that I would leave it, still less that I would end up trading words with the great powers of the cultivation world. I only wanted to live quietly and do a few interesting things with my hands. Events took hold of me like an enormous invisible palm and pushed me here anyway. I look at my own hand and say out loud that the world dragged the one man who least wanted to cultivate all the way to nascent soul. Things really are unpredictable. Then I smile and go back into the cabin, because a journey has ended, and ended is ended no matter how magnificent it was. Living people are obliged to look forward. 9 monster beasts the size of small mountains stand in harness and roar, and every living thing within hearing shakes. Each could stand against a soul transformation cultivator, which makes the arrangement faintly obscene because all 9 are pulling a carriage. The emperor of the Hyunmu kingdom is sitting in it. War drums beat, and the 1,000,000 men of his army stand at attention without a sound coming out of any of them. I swallow hard and wipe the cold sweat off my forehead. Forcing an entry into the barren ancient forbidden ground is not the sort of thing I'm good at, I tell His Majesty, and I suggest waiting a while longer. The corner of his mouth curves up. He reminds me there is another bronze ancient temple inside and asks how I expect to see it without going in. I agree, then explain that I am no fighter and would only be a burden hanging off his elbow. He does not get angry with me. He explains patiently that there is exactly one chance to force the barren ancient forbidden ground, and that without me at his side my chance of ever getting inside is gone. He also points out that I repaired the bronze ancient temple and asks whether I imagine he would be easy in his mind with me somewhere else. My mouth twitches at that. The longevity immortal vanished inside a bronze ancient temple's teleportation array. I only ever wanted to study how those arrays connect to one another. I truly had no other intentions. I look ahead at the barren ancient forbidden ground and let the resignation settle. Had the emperor abandoned the whole idea of stealing himself another lifetime, my own way in would have turned up eventually. Otherwise, I would have slipped out of the Hyunmu kingdom years ago, and nobody would ever have found me again. The land goes crimson from here to the edge of sight. Far out in the middle of all that red, a black mountain range sits like a bruise, and the two colors refuse each other. The 1,000,000 men stop at the border of the crimson ground, and even Emperor Jua does not step over it lightly. Nobody has written the specific dangers down anywhere in the Hyunmu kingdom, and that kingdom's archives go back a very long way. The whole of the record is one line: great terror, certain death. Emperor Jua breathes out, waves his right hand, and sends 3 humanoid puppets across the border. Those 3 were built with the resources of an entire kingdom poured into them. Each can stand against an ascent soul power, and their defense would take even a soul transformation cultivator a while to break. Scouting with them is the safest method anyone here has. They walk in carefully, nothing happens, and they keep going for several miles without a stumble. Jia Sionha lets his breath out, laughs, and starts saying that the barren ancient forbidden ground is perhaps not quite as bad as everyone has always. He does not reach the end of the sentence. A light breeze crosses the 3 puppets, and all 3 come apart into dust and blow away. Nobody says anything after that. I swallow hard and very nearly ask the Emperor whether he saw what I just saw. One look at his face changes my mind. Since the puppets are useless, he waves again, and the million men behind him begin to move. They set up an enormous and intricate formation, gather every man's strength into one place, and condense it into a black spear more than 10 miles long. Pooling an army this way is one of the Yeonmu Kingdom's great secrets, and one reason it has never lost a war. A million voices shout the word for killing at once, and the sound alone tears the clouds open. The spear goes at the Black Mountain range like something that has never been refused. It never reaches the mountains. It buries itself in an invisible barrier instead, and the whole forbidden ground answers by lighting up. Silver formation patterns of unbelievable complexity come alive across every inch of that land. I know formations better than I know most people, and one glance splits my skull open and turns my vision black. The backlash frightens me badly enough that I wrench my eyes away and do not look again. Their great general shouts for another strike. The million soldiers begin bleeding from every opening in their heads, burning their own life force to force more out of themselves. All that vitality pours in. The black spear turns blood red, and its power more than doubles. At a price like that, it gets a result, which is that the invisible barrier is breached by exactly 1 inch. While everyone is still celebrating that inch, a horse screams somewhere underground. A skeletal horse claws its way up out of the earth, and what sits on its back is a suit of bronze armor with nothing inside it. It comes at us at a gallop, swings a rotted battle halberd once, and shatters the spear that a million men bled themselves white to make. My scalp crawls tight against my skull. 3 white-haired old men come out of the ranks to meet it, and when they move, the mountains shake and the daylight changes color. Those 3 are the foundation stones of the Hyunnu Kingdom, and each has been alive for 1,500 years. Emperor Joa is forcing this door because his own lifespan is running out, and those 3 want exactly what he wants. Watching them go, the Emperor moves as well. He drives a war chariot forward, pushes his body past every limit it has, and tears an actual crack in those supreme formation patterns by main strength. The noise of it goes through my bones. There is nothing useful I can do in a battle this size, so I curl up in the corner of the war chariot and watch the world end through my fingers. The methods of this land have never been simple. Some men cultivate inward and some cultivate outward, and the 2 families have never agreed on vocabulary. The Great Cheon Dynasty is the standard for the inward road, which runs chi refining, then foundation establishment, then golden core, then ascent soul, then soul transformation. The Hyunmu Kingdom is the standard for the outward road, which cares only about the body and numbers its stages as plain layers. The 2 roads correspond exactly, whatever the names, with body refinement first layer answering to chi refining and the 5th layer to nascent soul. Back when Emperor Jua told me my grandmaster was beneath his notice, I tried to work out where he stood. Nascent soul is the 5th realm on the ladder. To kill perfected Okwa the way he killed him, a man would need the 6th at minimum. Watching him now with everything unlocked, I understand that I lowballed him badly. His strength has stepped fully into the 7th realm, and the only flaw is that he has not been standing there long. Something inside the Black Mountain range sighs, lightly, the way a man sighs at a child. The 3 old men grappling with the bronze armor turn into red mist between one heartbeat and the next. I have no words left in me at all. Emperor Jaewa's aura hardens, and he calls for his sword, punches a hole through space itself, and hauls an ancient longsword out of the emptiness. The bronze armor, with nothing holding it now, turns and comes for him. One stroke of sword chi goes out 1,000 miles and cuts it into scrap. That blade is the heirloom treasure of the Hyunnu Kingdom, the true martial sword, and for a few breaths it looks like enough. He swings it again at the formation patterns themselves, and the peerless killing array that shrugged off a million men splits like bean curd. Hiding in the corner of the chariot, I feel actual joy come up in me. It does not last. Something in the Black Mountain range snorts, cold and short, and one slender strand of hair comes drifting out on the wind. There is a small clear snapping sound. The heirloom treasure of the Hyunnu Kingdom, the divine weapon that just carves supreme formation patterns like soft food, is cut in half by a single hair. So is Emperor Jua. So is his army. The sword, the man's body, a million soldiers. The ground beneath all of them. Everything in that line is opened lengthwise, as though the hair were the only real weapon that ever existed here. Cut in half, the Emperor keeps hold of his upper body and roars. A colossal bronze ancient temple appears above him, the one his people tore out of the limitless secret realm, and something inside the Black Mountain range answers it faintly. The formation within blazes as he forces every scrap of himself into it. Then the mountain range sends out one more thing, and that thing is a single golden character. It strikes the temple, and the temple rings, and every piece of flesh still hanging on Emperor Jawa's frame is unmade into empty air. He is simply gone, and the temple goes with him, as the array finishes activating. Blood runs off Chua Seung-ha's chin and drips onto the crimson ground. The scattered pieces of the bronze armor crawl back together, turn their empty face toward him a moment, and ride back into the Black Mountains. Everyone is dead. The plan that ate the entire strength of the Hyunmu kingdom is finished in the time it takes to cut a thread. Jawa Seung-ha lives not because he was strong enough, but because whatever is in there wanted one man left over. Someone has to go back and tell the world in a human voice that the barren ancient forbidden ground is not to be touched. Inside the Black Mountain range, one bronze ancient temple slams down onto stone, and another just like it stands not far off. The two of them sit there in the dark with no ceremony at all, and Emperor Jua's bones lie scattered around them like refuse. With him dead and the temple delivered, the forbidden ground goes quiet again. Time keeps moving everywhere else, and the world keeps changing, and this place stays exactly as it always was. 3 months later, something in all that stillness moves. Stone grinds softly against stone, and a coffin half buried in the dirt shifts. The lid opens a finger's width, and a pair of eyes takes a very long look around before anything else happens. They are my eyes, obviously. When that strand of hair came drifting out of the mountains, I understood that this had stopped being a battle and become a demonstration. So I did the only thing my nature has ever permitted in front of a horror that size. I climbed into the 100 Defeats Immortal Venerable's stone coffin and swallowed a pill that puts a man into a death which is not quite death. Cowardice has kept me alive longer than any technique I ever learned. Only after checking a dozen times over do I push the lid back and climb out. So that is the terror of the barren ancient forbidden ground. 3 months have gone by and my hands still remember it. This world remains far too dangerous for a man who only wanted to sell coffins in peace. I do not know whether false death fooled this place or whether it never bothered to look. What I know is that I am standing here breathing, which means the barren ancient forbidden ground has decided for now not to kill me. Perhaps it spared the man in the 100 Defeats Immortal Venerable's coffin out of some old respect. Perhaps my cultivation sits so far beneath its notice that killing me would be like swatting at air, and a thing that weak will die here on its own soon enough. I spend a full hour walking the edges of what I can reach, and find no danger anywhere, which makes me far more uneasy than danger would have. In a place like this, no danger is the loudest danger there is. So I pick a loose thread out of the hem of my robe, hold it on my palm, and blow. The thread drifts off weighing nothing, and it never lands. It vanishes and a thread of golden light flickers along the ground where it was, for less time than it takes to blink. That is that then. I pace a while with nothing to say. I watch the silver formation patterns outside these mountains break 1,000,000 men, and I know exactly how far short of them I fall. The ones outside were silver, and the ones under my feet are gold. And I cannot tell you precisely how much worse gold is. Every other direction I test gives the same answer, which is that I am ringed in on all sides. The reason I am not dead is that the patch of golden formation patterns beneath me is held down by the bronze ancient temple. Without that weight, I would have been unmade the moment I left the coffin. In genuine helplessness, I ask the system what I am supposed to do, and whether being trapped here forever is now the shape of my life. It answers by asking why the host believes he will be trapped forever. Because these formation patterns are far too powerful, I tell it. Then why, it asks, does the host not comprehend them, since studying formations has always been his hobby? They are too complex, I explain, and at my realm another 1,000 years would not be enough. It asks what about 10,000, and whether time still means anything to the host. I stand there with my mouth open like a man who has been slapped. It is right. Time does not mean anything to me. If 1,000 years is not enough, then I will use 10,000, and the arithmetic still works out in my favor. My cultivation would not frighten a village dog, but I can go without food indefinitely and always could. My whole absurd life has been a search for somewhere quiet, and I would like someone to name me a more secluded address than this one. So long as the great terrors in here cannot be bothered with one small insect, life is going to be perfectly comfortable. So I thank the system for the reminder, and admit that after too long among other people I had nearly forgotten what I am. Then I walked cheerfully toward the nearer bronze ancient temple. Ja Seung-ha had every book in the Hyunmu pavilion copied out for me, and I have wanted the free time to read all of it for decades. The golden formation patterns can wait a few decades more. They are not going anywhere. The price is really not expensive, I explain. This is my top-grade golden silk cedar coffin, and within 100 miles there is nobody who does not know my name for excellent quality at low prices. At this price, I am barely making anything. This is my bottom line, and if nobody objects, silence will be taken for agreement. A faint sound of haggling drifts through the Black Mountain Range. Look closely and you will find a young man conducting a hard negotiation with a skeleton. I wait a few breaths, receive no objection, and get to work collecting the body. 50 years alone will do things to a man's idea of company. With the skeleton in the coffin, I check the dead man's effects, which come to 3 items laid beside him: a pill furnace, a jade slip, and a small porcelain bottle. My fingertip touches the pill furnace and a pit sinks into the top of it. The porcelain bottle does not survive being looked at much longer. Time really is the most powerful weapon anyone ever brought to a fight, and a pill furnace that fine ending as scrap is a shame. The jade slip holds. It is cut from 1,000-year ice jade, the kind where a chip the size of a fingernail costs 100,000 spirit stones, and this one is the size of my palm. The formula written into it is called Heaven-Mending Salve, and when I go looking through everything I have ever read, nothing answers. According to the record, the thing reverses life and death. However badly you are broken, however close your lifespan is to running out, the salve buys you 7 more days. A medicine that can patch the heavenly river is not being modest about its name. I flipped the jade slip into the system space because of course I want to make it. I also cannot. My store of knowledge is not deep enough, and everything that was common learning in this skeleton's day stopped circulating long before I was born. I can read the general sense of the words. I cannot recognize a single one of the herbs. The plants are probably still growing out there, but their names have been changed and changed again, and a formula with no illustrations is a list of strangers. Another coffin successfully sold. I turn and look at the bronze ancient temple 500 steps ahead of me. There is another one 300 steps behind. I smack my lips at that distant 500, then lie flat and go back to studying the golden formation patterns an inch in front of my nose. 500 steps away is the second temple I came for, and Emperor Jua's skeleton with it. When I first arrived, I intended to loaf for 20 or 30 years before starting any serious work. The Hyunmu Pavilion's entire library ran out in under 10, which left me no honest excuse. In the beginning, the going was appalling. I could clear about an inch a year, and even that inch was not truly comprehended, only surveyed well enough to put a foot on. 20 solid years brought me 5 steps beyond the temple's shadow. That was when my first customer here turned up. Habit is stronger than fear, so the instant I saw a body lying exposed, I had a coffin out for him. Almost everything on that skeleton had rotted away except one beast's skin book, and naturally I accepted the price my customer offered without haggling. Its owner had been a formation master, and the book was his entire life's learning. It moved me forward faster than 20 years of crawling had, and it gave me the proper name for what I was lying on. Ordinary formations borrow the strength of mountains and rivers, or run along some fixed path, and out of that they produce their effects. What covers the barren ancient forbidden ground does neither. These golden patterns grew directly out of the great Tao of heaven and earth, which makes them a manifestation of it rather than an imitation, and the old word for them is Tao patterns. The Beast Skin book puts it plainly. Tao patterns can turn mountains and rivers over and set the sun and moon the wrong way round, and nothing that is not supreme can command them. The progress is still slow. I finish one more step, look at the 499 still waiting, and my mouth twitches, even at several times my old speed. 300 steps cost me 40 years. Add the 10 years of reading before that, and I have now been in the barren ancient forbidden ground a full 50. 130 years have gone by since my last sleep, which leaves me under 30 before the next one. I take out the Beast Skin book and go through it again, and again I cannot read all of it. It is outrageous that nobody in the history of this world ever invented a script that simply stays in use. If I could read every word on these pages, my speed would multiply several times over. Having complained, I start back along the path I came by. 50 years of watching have taught me the local weather. Daylight here is mostly safe, and the nights are another matter entirely. In my first 10 years, I saw shapes drifting outside the bronze ancient temple after dark more than once. This world has never had any tradition of ghosts, but whatever moves around in here after sundown is not human either, so I keep my working hours to the daylight. And when the sun goes, I retreat inside and climb into the 100 Defeats Immortal Venerable's stone coffin. The sun sets and I make it back with room to spare. 7 or 8 finished coffins stand outside the temple in the dark, and even I will admit the atmosphere out there gets strange. It is really not that I do not want to collect your corpse. I call across the gap to Emperor Jua. My time is simply up. I ask the old man to bear with it and promise to come back for him, and I set the appointment 100 years out. 30 years here passes like one long afternoon. In those last 30 years, I covered another 300 steps, which still leaves 200 between me and both the second temple and his bones. Those 80 years in the barren ancient forbidden ground were the most peaceful stretch of my entire existence. There were no grudges here, and no entanglements of the heart, only a very long silence that nobody interrupted. Every day I studied Tao patterns and buried whatever dry bones I came across, and while burying them, I kept picking up odd little objects, a rusted iron rod, pills so far past their day that they rattled. The most ridiculous of the lot was a large silver bone, good for nothing except that nothing I own is harder, which is exactly why I kept it. Back inside the bronze ancient temple, I put my collection of oddities away in the system space and lie down in the stone coffin. The dark in there stopped bothering me long ago. Before I go under, I put my worry to the system. I have stayed here a very long time and still cannot guarantee my own safety, so I ask whether anything is likely to happen to me while I sleep. The system tells me there is nothing whatsoever to worry about. During sleep, the host is invincible, and no existence can harm him. It adds that during sleep, all of the host's vitality stops, at which point I will be indistinguishable from a stone. What kind of existence capable of threatening me, it asks, would trouble itself to attack a stone? A very sharp thought lights up behind my eyes. If that is true, I say, then I could wander the barren ancient forbidden ground freely while I sleep. The system does not recommend it, since the invincible window during sleep is limited. The window is 10 breaths in total, and after 10 breaths the host is forcibly woken. My face falls all the way down. I had a plan already assembled. Build a very large slingshot, launch myself out over the golden Tao patterns, and drop into deep sleep at the moment of release. Then I could come and go from this place whenever I liked. The interval would be long, admittedly, but as methods go, it was excellent. 10 breaths. What a stingy little arrangement. Having said as much, I tell the system to start the sleep and to stretch the duration to the maximum, because my attribute points are still far too thin. It answers that sleep has begun and that the sleep time is 160 years. The last word arrives and my consciousness stops on it. The final trace of living human breath in the barren ancient forbidden ground goes out, and the vast dark place does not react in any way at all. The heavy lid pushes open. I sit up in clothes that have rotted on my body and turn my stiff neck to look around. Nothing out there has changed. Not one speck of dust has moved. Only the rags hanging off me and the 160 new attribute points on the panel prove that this was not a nap. No wonder people say 7 days in the mountains are 1,000 years in the world, since time in a place like this does not so much pass as evaporate. The panel tells me what it always tells me after a long sleep. My strength and speed have dropped back to immortals. My defense alone holding at 91. My spiritual energy gone to nothing. And my lifespan standing now at 320 years. Being reduced to immortal every time I wake stopped upsetting me lifetimes ago. I look at the 160 points waiting to be spent, and put every one of them into defense, without hesitation. Then I ask the system for a label, the kind that turns raw numbers into actual realms, because otherwise I have no clear idea what I am capable of. Its cold voice reports that the label is being added, and then that the label has been added. A strength grade now sits beside each line, and the result is entertaining. Every field reads as mortal except defense, which reads as Nascent Soul Early Stage. Unbreakable by anything below Nascent Soul Early Stage is a serviceable skin to walk around in, and it should keep me alive outside. I sit down cross-legged and cultivate for the first time since I entered the barren ancient forbidden ground. At the moment I have no cultivation base at all, which means going without food is impossible, and a man in that position who does not fix it will starve. Spiritual energy pours into me in enormous quantity, and my realm climbs from chi refining and does not stop until Nascent Soul. The reason I move that fast has nothing to do with talent. It is that I know these realms better than the people who invented them, and I am carrying more resources than a sect. Everyone else spent their years desperately pushing their cultivation while I spent mine reading. I never once sat down to study a cultivation technique on purpose, and I have still read more of them than any teacher I ever had. Sangchang Temple, the Hyunmu Kingdom, the Night Moon Country. I know the methods of all three the way I know my own hands. I remember every book in the Hyunmu Pavilion and nearly wore out the ones in the book graveyard. Then there were my 2 trips to the Night Moon Country, profitable in the way my trade is profitable. Perfected Okwa, Wananagalta, Hojon of the Fox Clan, and Imbiam of the Tiger Clan. I collected every one of those bodies personally, and their storage rings came to me along with them. An undertaker who does business at a loss does not stay in business. An hour later, I come out of it holding Nascent Soul Late Stage, and I smack my lips and decide it will do. Pushing on to soul transformation would cost me something like 10 years, and 10 years for one more step is not worth the money. I climb out of the stone coffin and stretch until things pop, and while stretching I think about the leak. Every time I go under, all vitality in my body stops, and the spiritual energy inside me evaporates the way water leaves meat hung up to dry. Cultivating it back is quick enough, but doing that after every sleep for the rest of a very long life is tedious. So I take out the beast skin book and find my answer inside a minute. The heaven and earth extinction formation is what I want. I slap the page and grin at it. It is one of the 3 great killing formations the beast skin book records, and the description does not undersell itself. Whatever enters it has the road to heaven cut off above, and the yellow springs cut off below. with heaven, earth, and life all extinguished together. Something that thorough should have no trouble sealing a slow leak out of a sleeping man. Turning a killing formation into one that traps without killing is not small work, and I have time, since things like this get done by being taken slowly. I place the last step and stand at last inside the safe ground of the second bronze ancient temple. 90 full years to collect one corpse, I tell His Majesty, and I trust he will not let all that effort go to waste. Then I gather up his bones, which have gone crystal clear with age, and settle them into the coffin. His lower half is nowhere in this world, so I carve a wooden replacement instead. Nobody should go into the ground incomplete. The burial pays out, as burials always do, and this one pays twice. The first reward is the true martial sword with its tip missing. The second is a golden leaf the Emperor used as a heart-protecting mirror. I turn it over and frown, because unless I am badly mistaken, this is the 9 revolutions mysterious skill of the Hyonmu Kingdom. I am also fairly sure I have seen the thing before, so I go digging through the system space and come up with a second golden leaf of the same make. The broken edges drift together and close, and the 2 halves become one whole page. I look at the coffin with real reproach. That was a bit underhanded of His Majesty. So somebody from the Hyonmu Kingdom's ancestry got into the barren ancient forbidden ground long ago, and got back out again carrying souvenirs. I always wondered how a kingdom whose people had never entered this place knew for a fact that a bronze ancient temple stood inside it. With the 9 revolutions mysterious skill lying here in 2 pieces, the question answers itself. I cannot read one word on that page. The only reason I know what it is comes down to luck. Among the affairs Jua Seongha once handed me, there was a translated copy of the 9 revolutions mysterious skill, with 4 strange symbols drawn beside the title. I asked about them the way you ask about weather. He told me those 4 symbols meant the 9 revolutions mysterious skill, and that nobody in the entire Hyonmu Kingdom knew how to translate that script. At the time I paid it no particular attention. Then one day in here I pulled the lower half of the golden leaf out of the dirt. It could not be scratched, its edges would open a hand to the bone, and although the symbols meant nothing to me, I kept it because I keep things. Had the upper half not been sitting on Emperor Jua's chest, another 10,000 years could have gone by without my ever learning what I had. I pat the lid and tell him that this is precisely how the unsolved mysteries of the world get made. Somebody from his ancestry walked into the barren ancient forbidden ground, and how much that ancestor understood about this place probably died with the Hyonmu Kingdom's emperors. The man carried out a damaged volume of the 9 revolutions mysterious skill, and anything worth carrying out of somewhere like this is not an ordinary book. Now the emperor is dead, and every one of those secrets has gone into the coffin with him, which is a genuine pity. Then I turn and walk toward the bronze ancient temple. I have been chasing this since the day I learned the longevity immortal vanished into a teleportation array, and it has taken 290 years to reach the one thing I actually wanted. Inside, countless patterns arrange and rearrange themselves until they resolve into a scroll with only a few gaps left. The temples in the limitless secret realm and the night moon country forbidden ground were both wrecks by comparison. So this one gives me far more of the story than I have ever had. Long ago, all living beings borrowed the power of the ominous thing in order to escape the grip of the giant hand, and at first it worked. Later they discovered that the power they had borrowed was quietly eating the world out from under them. So they turned around, made common cause with the giant hand they had just fought, and drove the ominous thing back instead. It was repelled but not destroyed, and a portion of its power stayed behind. To keep it from returning, they built these 18 bronze ancient temples together, and handed them out to 18 races for safekeeping, with 9 entrusted to the giant hand itself. So that all of them could stay in contact, they folded the strength of heaven and earth into the work, and carved a 3-colored teleportation array inside every temple. That array carries across impossible distances and cannot be interrupted by anything else. People who survived all that together should have been able to share a world afterward. They went back to war instead. The layering in the carvings is obvious once you know to look, since the panels at the front and the panels at the back were plainly not cut in the same century. I read the whole thing through and have nothing to say. The 3-colored teleportation array was built to send a traveler to a chosen destination. After that many wars and that many centuries, the 18 bronze ancient temples are almost certainly nowhere near where they started, which means the array can no longer aim. It can only scatter. With 1 chance in 17, am I really going to find the longevity immortal at the other end of it? I stand in front of the array a long while being reluctant about it. Reluctance does not help, since until I know she is safe, I will not put my mind down halfway. So I tell the girl that she really does know how to make trouble for me. Some of the patterns in this hall have been deliberately rubbed out, which is somebody telling me plainly that certain things are not to be known. If I want to find her, I now have to work out which races were given the 18 temples, and she had better not have landed on the giant hand side of the ledger. 2 pieces of information are missing from these walls, and they are exactly the 2 that matter: the 18 guardian races and the origin of the giant hand. Back in the Night Moon Country Forbidden Ground, I found some of the same material erased, and I put it down to perfected Okwa, preferring that nobody read over his shoulder. That explanation no longer holds. Whatever can walk into the barren ancient Forbidden Ground and edit the walls is powerful past my imagining, and the great terror in these mountains is at least as likely a culprit. There is another loose thread. If the 18 temples have all been shoved out of position, then by rights everything they were pinning down should have crawled out centuries ago. That has not happened. The ominous power under the limitless secret realm had already been cleared away before I got there. Somebody is walking this world, putting out fires without signing their name to any of it. Whichever guess is closest to true, the existence behind it is not anything I can afford to poke at my current size. 2 months of work gets the 3-color teleportation array to the point of being usable. Partly that is because my formation skill is not what it was 50 years ago. Partly it is because I spent real time repairing the array in the limitless secret realm's temple, and a ruin you have crawled over inch by inch still teaches you the grammar of the thing. I draw spiritual energy out of spirit stones and feed it in, and the array lights up under my hands. I fill the small gaps from memory, straighten the 3-colored lines that have drifted out of true, and the mechanism turns over cleanly. Looking at it working, I swallow hard and take out the 100 defeats immortal venerable stone coffin. I get in, form the seal with both hands, and pull the lid shut fast. I have not comprehended this array, not remotely, and barely coaxing it into motion is the ceiling of what I can do. Heaven alone knows what an array I rewired will do with a passenger. Under those conditions, I am not traveling in nothing but my own skin. The array engages and the stone coffin leaves the world. Immediately something starts hammering on the outside of it, and I sit in the dark with my hands over my ears and cold sweat crawling down my forehead. I know enough about formations to picture exactly what is out there. Countless spatial cracks are slicing at the stone, which tells me the arrays on the 2 ends are not aligned, and that every misalignment is opening another blade. It is a very good thing I am a coward. A man who made this trip in his own body would not be leaving dust behind. Several hundred men with bronze skin and animal hides across their shoulders are dancing around a bonfire, stamping out something that is clearly a rite. Beyond the fire stands a tall bronze altar, and an old high priest kneels and rises and kneels again in front of it, muttering the words. Then the altar, which has done nothing for longer than any of them have been alive, floods with 3-colored light. The crowd stops dancing and the high priest stops praying. They hold this rite every 10 years purely as a formality, and nobody has any idea why the formality is answered. A heavy stone coffin comes down on the altar hard enough to smash the last of the faded 3-colored patterns to powder. Nobody moves. The coffin shifts. The people nearest it stumble backward, and then the lid slides open. A creature in extremely peculiar clothing with soft, pale, untouched skin sits up in the middle of their sacred ground. Several thousand eyes arrive on me at once. I have been here 4 heartbeats and I already have an audience. I look at the ruined array under me, then at the ring of people around me, and decide a friendly conversation is the correct opening move. I ask where this is. Nothing registers on any face, so I ask again in another tongue. Reading widely for centuries leaves a man fluent in dozens of languages, and whatever these people speak is plainly not the common tongue of the great Qian dynasty or the Hyonmu kingdom. Before I can learn where I have landed, I have to be able to ask. So I go down the list and I reach the 28th language before the old high priest's head comes up. He tells me, in something broken and very old, that this is the 10,000 mountains, and he asks who I am. I let out a breath I have been holding since the coffin lid opened. I explain that I am an outsider with a poor grasp of his language, and ask whether we might speak by divine sense instead. He nods and puts out a thread of it. Something is odd about him at once, because his aura is genuinely powerful while his divine sense is thinner than a golden core cultivator's. I do not stop to chew on it since my whole plan is to repair the array and leave. Our 2 threads touch. The high priest is instantly frightened into paralysis by the weight behind mine, and then he is on the ground kowtowing and turning around to make his tribe kowtow along with him. He is talking far too fast for a man who learned this language 9 minutes ago, so most of it goes past me. 3 words come through clearly enough: heavenly God, and gratitude, and white witch. They have surely not mistaken me for some tremendous and holy power, and from the look of things, my own schedule for leaving has just been cancelled. The high priest backs out of the room with great ceremony, having left me a spread of unidentifiable meats and fresh spiritual fruits, and instructed the divine envoy to enjoy his meal. I smile at all of it, then use divine sense to tell the young girl beside me that I cannot possibly finish this alone. She shakes her head fast and produces a long string of words I do not understand, though the gist is not hard to guess. So I laugh and offer a trade, since if she will not eat, she can teach me the language here instead. She nods happily and begins. The night goes by fast, and by the end of it, I can follow most of what is said to me. The place has no proper name, and the most specific thing anyone can tell me is the 10,000 mountains. How far the range runs has never been settled by anybody in recorded memory, for the simple reason that no human being has ever walked out of it. The cultivation here is genuinely novel, since these people do not temper the body and do not build an internal elixir. Instead, they raise venom worms, which kill enemies and save lives and do everything else besides. The single fatal flaw in the discipline is that raising them does nothing for a person's divine sense. I have never enjoyed cultivating, and I have always loved formations, and formation work leans on divine sense at every second turn. Centuries of that tempering have left me with a divine sense and a sense soul that outweighs plenty of soul transformation cultivators. That, and nothing else, is why an old man who has never met an outsider is on his knees to me. I tell the girl we can stop there and that Amon should go and rest, because the sky outside is graying and she is visibly tired. She gets up obediently and goes. Halfway to the door, she drops to her knees instead, and begs the divine envoy to save the White Witch clan, saying that if this continues, the Black Witches will finish them. My face does what it always does when someone asks me for that. I have no interest in stepping into a quarrel between races. There is too much killing in this world, and a man who tries to stand between all of it personally will simply be worn away. Besides the feud, there is my own problem, which is the 3-colored teleportation array. I have examined that altar, and it is certainly part of a bronze ancient temple, or rather the base of one, since whatever shell stood on top of it went missing generations ago. Repairing the array will take a great deal of material, and the most important piece is the metal the temples were cast from. The White Witch clan are the people of this place and understand it better than anyone, and without them I would not know which mountain to start under. People also do not help you first, so I tell her that I do not really understand what lies between her clan and the Black Witch clan, but that I can go and mediate. Whether it works is a matter of fate and not something I am able to promise. She thanks me delightedly and runs out of the room. Watching her go, I shake my head and smile. The people here are very simple. Anywhere else I have been, a stranger who fell out of the sky in a stone box would have been taken apart and studied by now. I go back to the language and to turning over how a man mediates a feud he knows nothing about. The high priest points at a village on the next slope and tells me the Black Witch clan's camp is right ahead. His tone is the exact excitement of a child bringing a parent to see the other child misbehaving. My brows come down. The two villages sit perhaps 2 or 3 miles apart, which for enemies is an absurd arrangement. If the hatred runs as deep as I have been told, then being this close and still not at each other's throats does not add up. Before I can chase the thought any further, the high priest raises his voice. He shouts at the Black Witch people to fetch their clan leader out and inform him that the divine envoy has arrived. The 2 young men on watch trot off obediently to do exactly that. That is not the tone of a man standing on his enemy's ground. And why is his enemy doing what he tells them? I am beginning to wonder whether I have been sold a story. The Black Witch clan comes streaming out, led by a dark-skinned man in middle age. He looks at my very strange clothing, hesitates, and then puts a probe of divine sense on me. I flick back with the smallest amount of divine sense I am capable of using, and he coughs blood down his own chin. Their clan leader is bleeding, so his people call up a seething mass of venom worms and close them in a wall around me. I look at that wall with no idea what to say. They had not touched the White Witch high priest standing right beside me. Every single insect is pointed at the outsider. 2 clans are supposed to be at each other's throats, and somehow I am the only person here anyone has a problem with. On top of which I used almost nothing, and their leader spat blood anyway, which is not a reasonable outcome for the strongest man in a village. I am beginning to feel arranged. I am still weighing whether to flatten everyone and walk out when the bleeding man climbs back to his feet. He roars at his own people to put the worms away and not to be rude to the divine envoy. Then he apologizes with enormous respect, begging my forgiveness for the offense and insisting his clan means nothing whatsoever by it. I cut him off and ask what makes him so certain that I am the divine envoy. He answers that the high priest said so, and that the divine envoy has just proved it. I point out that the 2 clans are supposed to be enemies, and he agrees that they are. I ask whether he then believes whatever that man tells him, and he says that he does. There is something wrong with the logic in this valley, and I am starting to find these people genuinely confusing. Getting the truth out of them means making the high priest and the Black Witch clan leader sit down together and explain from the beginning. When they finish, I lay it back out for them. The Black Witches and the White Witches were one family, and it was precisely because the family was about to die that it drove half of itself out of the house. The clan leader confirms it and quotes the instruction the Witch clan ancestors left behind. Whenever the Witch clan meets a difficulty it cannot survive, the clansmen are to be split into 2 parts, one strong and one weak, with their fates cut apart. I have no answer ready for that. As a method of keeping a race's ember alive, it is the most effective thing anyone ever devised. It is also the most inhuman because it requires the strong half to stand and watch everyone they grew up with die. There is no crueler sentence under heaven. I ask how recently they split, since it does not look like an old wound, and what forced the choice. The clan leader hesitates. Life in the 10,000 mountains has always been hard, he says, but the Witch clan could always scrape by. 3 years ago, a thunder beast came into Witch Clan territory and began squeezing them out of their own land a little more each season. If they had not been facing extinction, he asks me, would any man drive his own relatives out of the door? Thunder beast. I go looking through everything I have ever read, and it does not take long to surface. The Thunder Beast is one of the strong ones among the Beast Clan, and the Beast Clan resembles the Monster Clan without being the same thing at all. The Monster Clan are ordinary beasts that learn to take human shape. The Beast Clan are a race carried down unchanged out of the ancient world, with a heavier bloodline and innate divine powers they hold from birth. The Monster Clan live close to the Human Clan, while the Beast Clan hate the Human Clan without qualification. They also regard the Monster Clan as a stain on the Beast race, since in their view the Beast form is the strongest shape this world ever produced, and giving it up is treason. Having sorted that out, I tell them nobody sensible doubts the strength of the Beast Clan, and that the Witch Clan alone is unlikely to hold that ground. Then I make my offer. I will find them a new place to live, and in exchange they will help me with something. The High Priest agrees at once and thanks me, which is not surprising, since under the current arrangement the half of the family that dies is his. The Black Witch Clan leader is much less pleased. He tells me the Divine Envoy may not really understand the 10,000 mountains, since the place is thick with miasma and crawling with venomous insects and ferocious beasts. Finding a habitat fit to live in, he says, is harder than climbing into the sky. I tell him that things get done because people do them, and that we should go and look before we decide. If there truly is nothing out there, the ancestors' instruction will still be waiting for him. He nods, because he has run out of arguments, and because he never wanted to watch the White Witch Clan die either. He asks what else the Divine Envoy requires, promising that the Witch Clan will assist with everything they have. I tell him it is nothing much, that I am looking for a bronze ancient temple, and that they have surely seen the thing. Every face in the circle changes at once. When I ask what the problem is, the clan leader tells me they know exactly which temple I mean, because that place was the Witch Clan's own sacrificial ground. 3 years ago, the Thunder Beast took it from them, and they are not its match. I read the misery on him and understand immediately, since he thinks I am about to order them to take it back. So I smile and tell him that knowing where it is will be quite enough, and that I will handle the rest. Then I ask whether anyone can tell me where the Thunder Beast lives. I would like to go and talk to it, the Beast Clan not being universally stubborn in my experience. A plain, honest-looking young man steps straight out of the crowd and says he knows where it is, and will take me. The clan leader rounds on him instantly and orders Ari to get back, demanding to know why a child is interrupting while adults are speaking. The boy does not shrink an inch. He says loudly that he is already 16, that he had his coming-of-age ceremony last month, and that he is not a child. He wants to do something for the Witch Clan and does not want to watch Grandpa High Priest and the rest of them die. He is also the only one who knows the Seoul Cave Heaven properly, which makes him the best guide available. His father's lips move and then stop. Going to look at a Thunder Beast is about as dangerous as an errand gets. But the man is not only a father here. He is the clan leader of the Witch Clan, and a clan leader does not get to weigh his own son heavier than anyone else's. So he sets his teeth. Since the boy has spoken, he says, the boy will guide the Divine Envoy to the Seoul Cave Heaven, and had better remember that the Divine Envoy is a stranger to these mountains. Ari promises his father that nothing will happen to me, which I find touching in several directions at once. Then he comes bounding over, reports that he is ready, and asks when we leave. I tell him now, take hold of him, and take us both off the mountain. He advises me not to fly too high, or the ferocious beast will come at us. And he keeps advising all the way, pointing out this ridge and that valley and what waits in each. His advice is worth having, because we pass a great many powerful beasts, and a few of them would give even me a tiresome afternoon. The land blurs underneath us, and Ari cannot keep the envy out of his voice when he talks about how strong I am. He asks whether the Divine Envoy can get the Witch Clan out of their predicament. I tell him I can help with certain parts of it, and that getting out depends on their own effort. In this world, asking someone else for help is never as good as helping yourself. Then I tell him the rest plainly. I am a passerby to them and will not stay here forever, and in the end there is nobody they can lean on except themselves. I stop in front of an enormous cave mouth. I straighten my clothes, cut my hands, and announce myself formally as a cultivator of the human clan, Jin Jiang Sang, requesting an audience. A mass of unidentified liquid comes out of the dark and drenches me from scalp to boots. A huge head follows it out of the cave. I look down at what is running off my sleeves, and I work through the possibilities, and unless I have guessed very wrongly indeed, this is saliva. The head informs me that I am an insignificant ant, and tells me to scram. Then it spits again, and the second helping soaks me every bit as thoroughly as the first. I stand there for one full breath. Then I wipe my face off without a word, take hold of Ari, and walk away. He looks at my expression, which is not currently doing anything, and asks me very carefully whether the Divine Envoy is all right. I tell him I am fine, but that there is something he ought to know. I am not planning on leaving for now. The day I kill that thunder beast is the day I leave the 10,000 mountains. Moving fast through the dense forest with Ari beside me, I keep my face empty of everything, which takes more effort than it has taken in a very long time. This is the first time in several hundred years that anything has actually made me angry. Ever since the longevity system came to me, my principle has been to be decent to people. Across those centuries, I have never killed a single person, and even perfected Okwa did not die by my hand. And now the man who has spent his whole long life being decent to people has been spat on, twice. Why would it do that? I did not come to provoke it, and I did not come for revenge, so it had no reason at all. And more to the point, what gives it the right? It is an Ascent Soul Stage Thunderbeast and nothing more. I have met a great many Ascent Soul Stage cultivators, and every one of them was a name worth knowing. The Wolf King Wananagolta of the Night Moon Country, perfected Okwa, Patriarch of Sangchang Temple. Beyond those, I have stood in front of things that leave the Nascent Soul Stage far behind. The Hyunmu Emperor who stepped into the 7th realm, and the terror inside the barren ancient forbidden ground that no words will hold. Not one of them ever spat on me. I am an inner force realm cultivator of Sangcheng Temple, an honored guest of the Hyunmu Kingdom, an undertaker who has walked the length of the river of history. Countless prodigies have been my close friends and men who could move mountains, and fill seas have sat and laughed with me. With all of that behind me, by what right does one small thunderbeast get to spit on my face? Anger pushes my speed up considerably, and we are back at the White Witch Clan's village before I have finished being angry about it. The High Priest and clan leader Guri both start forward wanting to know what happened, and I speak before either of them manages it. You consider me a divine envoy, I tell them, so you should also believe in what I can do. Within 10 years I intend to kill that thunder beast in the Water Moon Cave Heaven, and if you believe I can win, then come and help me. If you think I cannot win, leave now, so that none of this touches you when it comes. Then I turn and go, and leave the two of them standing there bewildered. Inside the wooden house, I keep writing and drawing on strips of bark, working the thing out. Aemon comes in carrying a plate of fresh spirit fruit and offers it to the divine envoy lord to calm his anger, and I answer without lifting my head. I know your people have an ancestral instruction not to provoke whatever comes out of the altar, I tell her, and the instruction is sound, and things are not fixed forever. I am not the person your instruction is talking about, so there is no need to call me divine envoy. If she is willing, she can call me brother Jongsang, and I add that the business with the Thunder Beast is private, between it and me, and will not touch the White Witch Clan, so she can stop worrying. She starts to say divine, corrects herself to brother Jongsang, and tells me that is not what she came to say. I look up at that, confused, and ask what she did come to say. Something like longing moves through those big bright eyes of hers. When she was very small, she says, she heard there was another world outside the Great Mountain, and nobody in the entire White Witch Clan knows what the outside world is like. I came from out there, she says, so can I tell her what it is like? I look at the wanting in her face and take a moment before I answer. The world outside the Great Mountain is a very wonderful world, I tell her, and I would not recommend she go learning about it. She asks why. Because the world out there is more dangerous than every poisonous insect and every fierce beast in these 10,000 mountains. And out there, death is sometimes the merciful outcome. Then I untie the wood carving from my waist and hand it over along with the bark. Give the bark to clan leader Guri, I tell her, and have him arrange things according to what is on it. And if I am not mistaken, she will be choosing to face the Thunder Beast alongside me anyway. The carving is hers to keep, because she has been staring at it since I got here, and it has become genuinely awkward. Her small face goes scarlet on the spot, and she says she has not been. I ask whether she thinks I cannot tell. It is an ordinary wood carving with nothing special about it, I say, so if she wants it she should take it and play with it. The thing on my belt is a plump and thoroughly pleased looking sheep, and after a lifetime of carpentry my carving is good whether I intend it to be or not. She has lived in these isolated mountains since she was born, and a novelty out of a stranger's hands was always going to catch her. She thanks me happily and goes out cheerful, and I watch her go, and then put my mind back where it belongs. Beast Clan tend to live in groups, so the Nascent Soul Stage Thunder Beast in the Water Moon Cave Heaven is not what worries me. What worries me is the race standing behind it. Beat the junior and the senior arrives, beat the senior and something older than that arrives, and in the cultivation world that sequence is so common it barely deserves a name. Which is exactly why I am spending this much effort on the planning, since wiping out a race is not a simple undertaking. I have been decent to people all my life. I have never once been a soft persimmon that anybody gets to squeeze. 2 mouthfuls of spit do not simply get settled and forgotten. Under my arrangements, the White Witch Clan throws itself into the work with real enthusiasm. Towering trees come down one after another, and strange patterns get carved out of them with whatever tools the clan owns. And I walk the progress correcting people where they have gone wrong. Clan leader Guri comes over and asks whether these things will drive the Thunder Beast off. No, I tell him. This is only a spirit gathering formation I have improved, which both concentrates spiritual energy and screens out the miasma of the great mountain. Then I tell him what I have been thinking. I have watched your clan's Tao of goo insects, I say, and the power in those goo insects is not small, and your misfortune is that you ran into the one thing that counters them. Thunderbeast's scale turns aside almost any goo insect, and its innate divine power shuts every one of them down completely. Without that, your people would not be in the state they are in. Guri smiles bitterly and agrees that the Divine Envoy Lord is right, and says his clan did not survive in the Great Mountain without some ability to handle danger. It is only a pity, he says, that the White Witch clan's golden silkworm go was lost, since with it they might not have been so helpless. I ask what a golden silkworm go is. It is the most powerful goo insect his clan ever had, he says, and to be precise, it should be called a goo god. Legend says the golden silkworm goo can devour everything in the world, and that not even Thunderbeast's scale will stop it. I nod and tell him it does indeed sound like a fine thing, and that it is a pity it is lost. Then I ask why, since his methods cannot handle the Thunderbeast, he does not try mine instead. The people of the White Witch clan are all physically strong and extremely well suited to body refinement techniques, I tell him. So he should take these 2 cultivation methods first, and make his plans once his clansmen are stronger. And since he will not be able to read what I have written, I add that I have already explained the meaning to Aman and he can get the details from her. Guri takes the 2 pieces of bark grinning from ear to ear, thanks the Divine Envoy, promises his clan will not disappoint me, and leaves with them. After he goes, I do not stay in the village either. I find somewhere quiet and settle in to study the 9 Revolutions' mysterious skill. I never liked cultivating when I had no need to fight or kill anyone. And now that a war is coming, I suppose I had better cultivate a little. Then I sit there for a long while, getting absolutely nowhere. It makes no sense. I cannot cultivate this 9 Revolutions' mysterious skill at all, and turning the golden page over and over in my hands does not tell me where the error is. Jawa Seongha gave me the translated first half of it a very long time ago, and working from that half I deduced the complete translation myself. And having translated it, the thing simply will not be cultivated. Then Ari pokes his head around the side and comes creeping over and asks the Divine Envoy what he is doing. I glance at that honest face of his and say it is nothing, only something I am studying, and ask what he wants. Then I set the golden page casually aside, since nobody alive can read the writing on it, and I am not worried about him learning anything by looking. His weathered face goes red and he rubs his hands together and says that the Divine Envoy is so powerful and that he wants to become my disciple. You do not need to think about becoming a disciple, I tell him, because I never take disciples. The 2 cultivation methods I gave clan leader Guri are not bad, so he should cultivate properly and his future will be respectable enough. He is visibly disappointed by how flatly that lands. Then, on his way out, his eye catches the golden page beside me. He says offhandedly that the Divine Envoy really is amazing, and that this 8-9 arcane art sounds like a very powerful cultivation method. I call him back before he has finished turning around. He asks whether there is anything else. I ask what he just said. 8-9 what? The 8-9 arcane art, he says. Hearing a name that strange and that familiar come out of him without a moment's hesitation, I pick the golden page straight back up and ask whether he can read the writing on it. He asks what there is not to understand and points out that among the young men of the clan he knows the most characters. That is not what I mean, I tell him. I mean, why does he recognize the writing at all? He asks what is wrong with me and says these are the words of the Witch clan, so why on earth would he not recognize them? I have nothing to say to that because I did not expect the coincidence to run this way. It is true that I learned the language of the Witch clan. I learned it as speech, from Aman, and I have never once seen it written. The fragments I picked up out of old books years ago described it as a very ancient tongue and recorded some pronunciations, and nothing in any of them showed me a script. So I assumed, without ever examining the assumption, that the Witch clan language had no written form and was a small oral tongue passed mouth to mouth. That situation is common enough that it never struck me as odd. My mouth twitches. Then I beckon him over and ask Ari to help me translate the words on this. He is delighted to be asked, and in about a quarter of an hour he has translated the whole thing, and when I have heard his version I roll my eyes so hard it nearly hurts. The 9 Revolutions mysterious skill is the second strongest cultivation method in the Hyunmu kingdom. For thousands of years almost nobody has mastered it, and the few who did found its power fell well short of the legends. I now understand exactly why. Because the ancestor of the Hyunmu kingdom mistranslated it from the very first line. The man managed to turn 8-9 arcane art into 9 Revolutions mysterious skill. He got 2 characters out of 4 wrong in the title alone, so I can only imagine what happened to everything after it. Having silently complained about the ancestor of the Hyunmu kingdom for a while, I look at Ari and tell him it seems this opportunity was fated to be his. Since he translated the 8-9 arcane art, I will pass the method on to him. He immediately starts to go down on his knees to kowtow and become my disciple, and a thread of spiritual force stops him where he is. Do not be in a hurry, I tell him. Passing the method to you means you have this opportunity. It does not mean I want you as a disciple. Then I add the part that matters. Once he has learned the 8-9 arcane art, he must not tell anyone, and that includes his own clansmen. This method has a serious origin behind it, and letting it slip could bring disaster down on the White Witch clan. He nods solemn about it, and tells the divine envoy not to worry, that he will tell nobody. Good, I say, and tell him to stop calling me divine envoy and call me Mr. Okay, Mr., he says. Then I start teaching him the basic essentials of cultivation, because the 8-9 arcane art is a profound method and Ari has no foundation whatsoever, and cannot begin to cultivate it as he stands. An hour later, he has the basics, and I tell him the lecture ends there and that he should go and get familiar with it. And he says Ari has remembered. After he leaves, I sit looking at the 8-9 arcane art in my hands. I thought you were only a body refinement technique, I tell it. Apparently I was wrong about that too. The largest yin number is 8, and the largest yang number is 9. And 8 multiplied by 9 gives the largest number in Taoism. Achieve 9 revolutions, strip away every trace of acquired yin, and bring the innate true yang fully into the open. 3 souls merge into 1, 7 spirits integrate into the body. Then the sent soul gathers eternally and never disperses, and the cultivated body endures uncounted calamities without breaking. By the end of reading that, the corner of my mouth is curling in a way I cannot control. Because in theory, the 8-9 arcane art is a method for achieving long life, and whether it truly delivers that is a separate question entirely. What is not in question is the power in it, which runs past anything I had imagined. It combines internal and external cultivation in one system, and records a list of divine powers I would not have believed if I had read them anywhere else. I currently hold exactly 1 golden page of it, and that single page outweighs everything else I own put together. Longitudinal golden light and heaven-earth manifestation. Those names alone sound formidable, and I have struck gold. Sir, a sturdy young man in coarse linen asks, coming up to me, did you have any discoveries today? I put away the pen and paper and tell him it is the same as always, that the thunder beast rarely comes out. He asks whether even I am no match for it. I tell him I do not know about that, and that he knows me well enough by now to know I generally dislike fighting. Then I ask how his 8-9 arcane art is coming along. He thanks me for the concern and says he has cultivated it to the 7th level, and that he will be able to cultivate the longitudinal golden light divine ability very soon. I nod, satisfied. To reach the 7th level of the 8-9 arcane art in 10 years, I tell him, means he was naturally made of the right material for this technique. It is only a pity that I hold the first 9 levels and the remaining 63 will almost certainly never be gathered. Then I tell him to wait a few more months, and that once he has the longitudinal golden light we can go and make trouble for the Thunder Beast. The young man in front of me is that honest lad Ari from 10 years ago. When the White Witch clan learned I meant to take revenge on the Thunder Beast, every one of them assumed a war would start almost immediately. Nobody expected the wait to run a full 10 years. Across that decade, apart from teaching Ari and Amon, I have spent essentially all of my time watching the Thunder Beast. Hearing that I finally intend to move, Ari gets nervous, which is reasonable. That is a soul transformation stage Thunder Beast, and while I did reach the soul transformation stage 3 years ago, I only just arrived there. Against an old hand at the same stage, my odds are not encouraging. Sir, he says, the current cultivation system is so complicated, if one day he leaves the 10,000 Great Mountains, how is he supposed to judge the strength of an opponent? There is no way to judge it, I tell him, and he will have to rely on his own instinct. External cultivation and internal cultivation each have their advantages, and although the realms line up roughly when you sort them coarsely, look closely and the discrepancies open right up. In a life or death fight, the outcome hangs by a thread, and the slightest difference is enough to decide which way it falls. He laughs and says that sounds like far too much trouble, and asks why there cannot simply be one unified method of cultivation. Since both internal and external have their advantages, he says, why not cultivate both? Theoretically, that is possible, I tell him, and so far nobody has ever managed it. The 8-9 arcane art does achieve primordial spirit power by way of the physical body, and it is still fundamentally weighted toward external cultivation. Then I point out that he knows both internal and external methods, and that the theory he has just proposed is genuinely interesting. There remain a great many problems buried inside it, I tell him, and he would have to solve those himself. Perhaps in 1,000 years he unifies the entire cultivation world and builds a wholly new system out of it. He smiles at all that eloquence and does not take a word of it to heart. The notion of cultivating both ways was only something he raised in idle conversation, and even the man who raised it never believed it would come to anything. What are you two talking about now? Somebody asks, and whether they can be told. A plainly dressed woman comes over carrying a food box, and the plainness of the dress does nothing to hide what she looks like. Her eyes are bright and quick as black grapes, and her lips are red enough to notice. Her skin is fine enough that a hard look might bruise it, and her long black hair is pinned up carelessly with a single pin. Dressed that simply, the natural beauty of her comes through completely. Ari grins and tells Amon she gets more beautiful the older she gets, and that he remembers when she was dark and skinny. Then he asks why, given Sir's realm and the fact that he achieved EDA a long time ago, she insists on bringing him meals. Amon gives him a look cold enough to change the weather. He has learned from brother Ginseng this long, she says, and still cannot control that mouth. And since he has achieved EDA himself, he will not be eating later. That look makes Ari physically pull his neck in. I smile a little and tell them that, although a cultivator can achieve an Edea, there is nothing wrong with eating a bit more. Ari asks curiously why. Because people always need to eat, I say, and being touched by the smoke and fire of the mortal world a little more often puts a little more humanity in you. Besides, Amon's cooking is delicious, so does he really not want any? Exactly, Amon says. Brother Ginseng is the reasonable one here, unlike certain people whose brains have been ruined by cultivation. Ari rolls his eyes and says it is not that he does not want to eat, it is that she is biased. Sir's meals always have chicken legs in them, he says, while his own contain endless green vegetables. And if she put chicken legs in his, he would certainly be willing. Eat it if he wants and get lost if he does not, she tells him. If he wants chicken legs, he can go and get them himself. He is being given food and still being picky, so today he gets nothing. Then she physically shoos him aside and sets my food out in front of me, and Ari squats off to one side muttering about it. Where Ari gets roughness, I get nothing but gentleness, and she has all the manner of a woman keeping house for someone. Brother Ginseng, she says, you have watched the Thunder Beast for 10 years. Have you worked out its weakness? I swallow the chicken in my mouth and tell her that I have not worked out its weakness, and that I have worked out a whole pile of other problems. The Water Moon Cave Heaven is one of the White Witch clan's own habitats, and measured on spiritual power alone, the place is not impressive. There is no good reason for it to attract a soul transformation stage beast at all. It came anyway, and it has stayed ever since. More interesting still, it could have wiped the clan out easily and did not, and merely frightened everyone off, which is not how a beast behaves. And every single time it eats, it becomes overwhelmingly sleepy, which makes no sense either, because its soul transformation cultivation it could go 10 years without sleeping and suffer nothing. Amon thinks about that and asks whether any of those problems help in beating it. In another man's hands, no. In mine, that may not be the case. 3 to 5 months go past in what feels like no time at all, and then one day, just as Ari finishes his training, I come over holding something and looking pleased with myself. Have you successfully refined the longitudinal golden light? I ask. He reports honestly that he has mastered it. Good, I tell him. Follow me. And I beckon and set off. And he follows, confused, and stays confused right up until the route starts telling him something. Sir, he says, are you planning to go to the Water Moon Cave Heaven? Yes, I say. Is there a problem? He gets excited immediately and asks whether I am moving against the Thunder Beast. In that case, he says, he will go straight back and gather the clansmen because the White Witch clan has spent 10 years preparing for exactly this day. Then he turns to go and I catch him by the arm and pull him back. Why are you calling anybody? I ask. This is a job for the two of us. His face fills with question marks. Over 10 years I have helped the White Witch clan cultivate continuously and taught them a great many battle formation methods. Everyone assumed I was assembling the strength of the entire clan to fight the Thunder Beast to the death. And now I am telling him 2 people is the whole roster, which raises the obvious question of what the last decade was actually for. Seeing that look, I know exactly what he is thinking. Stop looking so reluctant, I tell him. The clan spent 10 years preparing for something else entirely. It is one Thunder Beast. Do I look like a man who needs to spend the trump card he has been building on one Thunder Beast? Joy finally reaches his face and he asks whether Sir has an even larger scheme. Of course, I say. If we kill the Thunder Beast in the Water Moon Cave Heaven, does he imagine the race behind it will simply let that go? What we do today is both the opening of the whole plan and its single most critical link, and if it does not meet my expectations, then we should prepare to run. He thumps his chest and tells me that in this operation Ari will help Sir even if it costs him his life. You will not need to risk your life, I tell him. You need to keep your mouth shut later. Then I turn and walk toward the Water Moon Cave Heaven. Standing where I was spat on 10 years ago, I take a moment to arrange my mood, and then I arrange my face into something thoroughly fawning. Jin Jung sang of the human race as a supreme treasure to present. I call, and my voice goes rolling into the cave, and a massive head comes out of it. The Thunder Beast recognizes the human race cultivator from a decade ago, and roars that I dare come here again, and asks whether I truly think it cannot kill me. I put on a look of panic with impressive speed. Lord Thunderbeast, I say, please forgive me, since I came only to thank Lord Thunderbeast for the grace of sparing my life 10 years ago. 3 years ago I happened to obtain an immortal stone, and my fortune is shallow and I cannot comprehend its mysteries, so I have come specially to offer it up. Then I pull the black cloth off and hold out a stone the size of a millstone. The confusion in those enormous eyes is worth the entire 10 years on its own. Because from any angle, this is a rock. But if it is only a rock, then what exactly am I doing? Am I here to humiliate it, to make it die of embarrassment? Unable to work out what the human race in front of it is playing at, the Thunder Beast lowers its head on instinct, sniffs the stone in my hand, and then licks it. More confusion. This really is just an ordinary rock. No poison in it, no unusual sensation of any kind. If anything, it tastes faintly of wild grass and dirt. How dare you, it roars. This is clearly an ordinary stone, and you dare to trick me. The pressure coming off it sets me trembling, and the stone falls out of my hand and lands hard on the ground. Lord Thunderbeast, I say, please see clearly. When I first found this stone, it gave off multicolored light, and there was faintly a piece of immortal gold visible inside it. My strength is weak, and I could not break the stone open, which is precisely why I brought it to your lordship. Still daring to argue, it says. Scram. The breath alone knocks me over, and seeing it thoroughly enraged, I grab Ari and leave. Once we are well away, the Thunder Beast looks at the ordinary rock lying on the ground and hesitates. Then its tongue flicks out and the rock goes into its mouth, and it chews carefully and finds no immortal gold in it whatsoever. It swallows the crushed stone, glances the way we went, and sneers to itself. Stupid human race, it says. My Thunder Beast race feeds on metal and ore, and our bodies are immune to every poison. It does not know what I was trying to do, and it is certain that I absolutely cannot harm it in the slightest. Once its business here is finished, it intends to slaughter every one of us. Then it turns to go back into the cave and discovers that its body will not move. The enormous shape comes down and hits the ground, and two sneaky figures come strolling back. Lord Thunderbeast, I call. Are you all right? How audacious, it says. You dare come back, and asks whether I believe this lord will kill me. It lies there on the ground blustering while I take out a broken sword and send it flying, and the Hyunmu sword goes straight through its body without the Thunderbeast feeling anything at all. No retaliation. I pat my own chest and laugh and say that it really cannot move, which puts my mind considerably at ease. Then I stroll over and start handling it, touching the scales for a while, tapping the teeth for a while, entirely absorbed in the curiosity of the thing, which is a great deal for a noble Thunder Beast to endure. Human, it says, if you dare touch me again, believe it or not, I will kill your entire. I slap it across the face before it finishes the sentence. Not hard. The humiliation is the point, and the humiliation is total. Why are you shouting? I ask it. Could it not see that I am trying to work out how to make its death somewhat more miserable? All that shouting interrupts my train of thought. The Thunder Beast has no answer to that, and I can see it wondering how I have the face to say such a thing out loud. My righteous indignation leaves it entirely speechless, and meanwhile, Ari examines the collapsed shape with open curiosity and asks how I made an Ascent Soul Stage Thunder Beast unable to move. I take out an ordinary dagger and start carving on its body while I answer. Thunder Beasts feed on metal and ore, I tell him, and their scales are effectively indestructible and their bodies turn aside almost every poison. A species like that is genuinely a darling of the heavens. I watched this one for a full 10 years, and across those 10 years I kept turning over a single question. Faced with a race that powerful, what method could possibly annihilate them? The Thunder Beast, unable to shift so much as a limb, laughs out loud at that.